Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the dustiest corners of history, spaces where the paint chips, the wind whispers, and the tea is perpetually lukewarm. That's right, we're diving into the realm of housemaids in Victorian estates, the forgotten heroes who scrubbed, wiped, straightened, and sometimes collapsed on the very couch meant for dramatic swoons. Not from passion, but from breathing in too much furniture polish. This isn't some romanticized costume drama. This is the authentic, creaking, mildly supernatural reality behind those velvet drapes. So before you settle in with your luxury linens and white noise app, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely appreciate what's happening here. And if you have thoughts on traditional feather dusters versus modern cleaning tools, drop them in the comments. Now, lower those lights. Turn on a fan for that nostalgic ambient sound, or just for the reassurance that you won't be addressed as girl by someone barely out of adolescence, and get comfortable. Let's take a moment. Have you ever thought about what an actual day looked like for a housemaid? Was she merely scenery, or did she experience her own conflicts? Did maids genuinely find satisfaction in buffing silverware, or was it all quiet resentment? Why did every Victorian residence appear constructed with excessive staircases and insufficient plumbing? How many different ways can you sabotage an elegant dinner before being permanently relegated to the washing area? Could you make it through 7 days in crisp black and white, sustained only by diluted tea, anxiety, and the slim possibility of time off? And exactly how much were they aware of the household's private matters? Was the butler truly the one in control? Could you predict who was about to lose their position by the sound of the dinner chime? And is it accurate that being a housemaid was essentially the original unscripted television without the confession camera, but with 700% more grime? Congratulations! You've just awakened in a Victorian estate. It's 1875. You're dressed in a pressed uniform. You can't recall the last time you rested, and somebody's ringing a bell in the distance. It's likely meant for you. Best of luck. The residence is quiet, the sky just turning grey, and your eyelids flutter open to the noise of the servant's bell, a sound so conditioned it now haunts your nightmares about undercooked oatmeal. You have roughly 7 minutes to get dressed, secure your apron and arrange your hair neatly, but not too ambitiously. The floorboards are freezing. The atmosphere is heavy with melted wax and yesterday's vegetables. Welcome to yet another shift in domestic service. Let's discuss those 7 minutes. For most individuals, 7 minutes equals a brief rinse or perhaps 2 minutes of device scrolling repeated 5 consecutive times. For you, it's a complete speed challenge, a battle against time. With nothing except a candle nub, a worn hair tie, and the overwhelming anxiety of tardiness, you struggle through the darkness, yanking on your rigid, nearly frozen outfit, attempting to sidestep the questionable puddle near the entrance that, based on the odour, absolutely wasn't present last evening. There's no delay option, just the possibility of the head housekeeper's firm tap and even firmer words. You move soundlessly because quiet is precious, particularly when the lady of the house hasn't received her morning beverage yet. Every plank in the attic protests with your movements, risking waking the other servants. You suspend your breathing, toes curling from the chill as you fasten your boots, understanding that if you're the final one leaving bed, your complete day will be devoted to compensating for this initial transgression. You attempt to groom your hair with a comb that surrendered half its teeth 2 previous users ago. A tidy presentation is everything. Not too elaborate, not too simple, just sufficient to escape criticism. If fortune smiles, you recall checking for a random piece of lint on your neckline. If fortune frowns, you'll receive commentary at the morning meal, likely in everyone's presence. Below, the residence remains in that peculiar liminal state of dawn where everything seems vaguely eerie and considerably frigid. You proceed quickly, descending down infinite, groaning flights of stairs constructed apparently by somebody who despised rest and wanted to maximize leg exercise. Every footstep is a wager. Too rapid and you'll stumble over your own garment. Too leisurely and the head housekeeper will appear behind you with an exhale that communicates, "I anticipated disappointment, but not at this hour." You ponder, not for the initial time, if the designers of Victorian estates were secretly compensated by the step. Once inside the kitchen, the atmosphere is warmer, saturated with the fragrance of coal smoke and previous day's bread. The washing maid is already awake, sleeves pushed up, heating water for tea and grumbling softly about her circumstances in existence. You acknowledge in understanding. Though verbal exchanges are dangerous before sunrise, somebody always recalls your task is initiating the day's fire, which requires wrestling with an obstinate grate, darkening your digits and hoping the flue doesn't release a cloud of ash onto your recently cleaned apron. There's a ranking system here, and the sequence you appear in establishes who receives first opportunity at the preferable tasks, starting the fires, collecting the coal, or, if you're delayed, emptying last evening's chamber vessels. With the fires burning and water prepared to heat, you arrange the morning service. Teacups that must be spotless, a teapot that must be perfect, and, if you treasure your employment, the lady's preferred utensil positioned at precisely the correct orientation. There's a short, sacred instant when you and the other servants share a piece of bread, or, if fortune favours, a bit of preserve. This is your breakfast, consumed while standing in quiet, with one sense attuned to the summons, and the other to the cook's cautions about creating crumbs on her pristine floor. Before long, the residence begins to awaken. You detect the initial movement of fabric above, the far-off sound of the gentleman's footwear, and the unmistakable complaint of a youngster who has just recalled he dislikes mornings, his teacher, and quite possibly you. You inspect your uniform one final time, flatten your apron and prepare yourself for the barrage of instructions, inventories and demands that will occupy every conscious moment. All this, and the sun hasn't even appeared, and so you commence again. Another day calculated in chores, footfalls, and the perpetual wish that just once somebody will create a position with fewer stairs and marginally more rest. Until that moment, you continue moving quietly, competently, perpetually, one bell sound, away from catastrophe. The residence is still a dormant creature of fabric and polished timber, but you're already awake and mobile, a silhouette in a dark dress merging into the wallpaper like an anxious spirit. This is the portion of your day where you must master the ancient and honourable skill of reaching somewhere rapidly without ever producing a noise. It's a talent acquired over months of embarrassment. The initial time, you clomped across the corridor in borrowed footwear. The second time, you knocked over a vase your week's earnings couldn't conceivably cover. And the third time, you received the expression from the head housekeeper, a stare so frigid it could spoil the dairy. You float, you creep, you slide. The secret is in the ankles, knees flexed, toes angled out, feet positioned heel to toe like you're trying out for the globe's most underfunded dance performance. But this performance has greater consequences, and no melody. Only the sporadic snore from behind a shut entrance, the subtle ticking of a tall clock, and the constant possibility of encountering somebody who'd prefer not seeing you, which, in Victorian society, is practically everybody. Above the servants' quarters, your initial task is to transport hot water to the sleeping chambers. You hold the substantial pitcher with both palms, arms throbbing, praying not to spill a single drop onto the buffed floor. If you do, it's a scramble to wipe it up before the footman notices, and believe the footman perpetually notices. He's positioned at the turn, dusting imaginary particles, secretly wishing you'll commit an error. It's a residence-wide competition, really. Catch the maid making mistakes. The victor receives the reward of a lifted eyebrow, and the unfortunate loser a morning of shame. The corridor itself is an obstacle. Carpeting is soft but uneven, with concealed bumps that risk upending you at every footfall. Protesting floorboards wait in concealment, memorised only by those who've devoted countless mornings charting the secure path. There's that particular spot outside the azure bedroom. Step too near to the partition and the complete section awakens to a noise like a whale exhaling, a catastrophe you won't duplicate unless you have an affection for buffing railings. As punishment, as you rush from chamber to chamber, you prevent direct visual contact with the ancestral paintings. Some are benevolent, most are intimidating, and a few appear to be evaluating your bearing. Did that one's eyepiece just shift? You make a notation to examine your reflection in the next brass candle holder, just to be certain. The butler has been understood to reprimand for untidy presentations, which, interpreted, signifies your hair has rebelled in a direction not approved by the household guide. You make a competition of calculating your corridor dashes. How extended does it require to arrive at the emerald bedroom and return before the lady summons? Today it's 23 seconds, a personal record, and just rapid enough to claim the superior portion of the bread at the next kitchen interval. At the grand stairway, you pause. This is where numerous a maid has encountered her collapse, literally. Each step is a buffed slide greased by years of beeswax and wishful thinking. You clutch the railing, descend, and pray that if you do fall, you'll land on something cushioned, like the carpet, and not on something fragile, like your prospects. Every so often you detect footfalls ahead and must press yourself against the wallpaper. Sometimes it's another servant, arms loaded with linens. Sometimes it's the head housekeeper searching for violations. Worst of all is the unexpected visitor surfacing early in a sleeping cap, requesting tea or worse, dialogue. You master the skill of courteous invisibility, acknowledging just sufficiently to recognise existence, but not sufficiently to alarm the aristocracy. There's a rumour that once a servant made genuine visual contact with Lady Fotheringay before breakfast. She was never observed again. When you finally arrive at the conclusion of the upstairs section, you release your breath. You've succeeded. Hot water transported, service in position, and no porcelain victims. The residence remains asleep, the private matters still concealed in bed, and your footwear blessedly remain mark-free. All that's remaining is to do it again and again and again. Welcome to the unrelenting, acrobatic, completely unrecognised realm of the silent corridor dash. Part stamina competition, part covert operation, perpetually one step from disorder. Before the household even considers opening their eyes, you're already submerged to the elbows in the most glamorous of morning duties. Chamber vessels. Yes, the porcelain seats that are, in reality, not seats at all. Just reminders that plumbing in the Victorian estate is predominantly ornamental, like the household's assortment of unread classical literature. Managing chamber vessels isn't a task for the squeamish or the weak of constitution. It's a daily examination of power, equilibrium, and emotional separation, a sort of Olympic competition for the undervalued. Your method to the sleeping chamber is strategic. You hope nobody is conscious, especially not the gentleman who once surprised you mid-emptying with a polite throat clearing and a request for another covering, if you would. It is a peculiar closeness, this pre-dawn performance, tiptoeing into the private realms of individuals who scarcely know your identity but entrust you with their most personal deposits. You've acquired the ability to move rapidly but soundlessly, cradling the chamber vessel like it's a sleeping infant you wish won't stir. If you jostle it, it will splash. If you release it, you will desire for the ground to consume you completely. The technique is all in the wrist. A veteran maid can transport 2 chamber vessels in one palm while maintaining a pitcher of hot water in the other, all while manoeuvring 3 flights of stairs and a maze of sleeping canines. The novice error is swinging the vessel. That's how you conclude with an impromptu mopping task and a reputation for reckless inclinations. You master an expressionless face because nothing reveals a beginner quicker than a nose scrunched in disgust or a mouth inhaling through a sleeve. You cultivate a 6th perception for which chamber vessels are the hazard areas. The gentleman after a delayed supper, the youngest youngster after a forbidden plum, or, on the most terrible days, the house guest with a sensitive constitution. Outside, the winter atmosphere stings, and the only thing more frigid than your palms on the iron handle is the possibility of being observed by another servant while transporting your aromatic cargo. You proceed quickly through the rear passage, desiring for invisibility, perpetually preparing for the instant when the butler sweeps past, face stony, as if he doesn't also require his vessel emptied. There's an unspoken ranking, even among bodily evacuations. In the washing area, the authentic work commences. The chamber vessels are emptied, rinsed and scrubbed, each with its own brush, maintained separate from everything remotely food-associated, at least in principle. After last week's confusion, you now verify everything twice. The odour is beyond description, a combination of lye soap, previous day's vegetables, and whatever else the household ingested. The opening is perpetually open, irrespective of the climate, and the washing maid gives you a compassionate acknowledgement as you handle your brush with something nearing dignity. If fortune favours, nobody notices your labour. If fortune disfavours, somebody remarks on the freshness of their vessel. On rare, unfortunate mornings, the household rises early, catching you mid-scrub. There's no preparation for this instant. You just continue scrubbing, vision down, face flushed, as if it's the most ordinary thing in existence. It's a peculiar contradiction. The more invisible you are, the superior you've performed. The only proof of your labour should be a subtle hint of lavender water remaining behind if you can spare the genuine substance. Otherwise, it's just hope and resolve. Back upstairs, you restore the cleaned vessels, covers on handles buffed as if nothing occurred. There's a skill to this too, aligning the handles, positioning the vessels beneath the beds at the precise orientation, and never ever remarking on the contents, no matter how much you desire to caution somebody away. The household will never understand how near catastrophe came, or how many heroic rescues you executed in the name of discretion. And that's how, day after day, you earn your gold medal in the least glamorous competition of all. Chamber vessel duty. Quietly heroic, perpetually thankless, and a daily reminder that in Victorian domestic service, your most crucial labour is the labour nobody desires to discuss. Before the remainder of the residence has even contemplated waking up, before the youngsters scream, before the gentleman coughs, before the lady's bell sounds with the urgency of somebody discovering a mark on a napkin, there is an instant of refuge in the kitchen. This is not the kitchen you observe in culinary books, all sunshine and fresh bread. This is the pre-dawn territory of the staff. Cold stone flooring, the subtle gleam of embers in the stove, and a table that's already adhesive with previous day's preserve. Here a quiet tradition unfolds, as essential and enigmatic as a secret society, the early morning tea. You join the others, faces still marked with pillow impressions and fantasies of a superior existence, or at least an extended sleep. There are no courtesies conversing before the initial cup is considered a workplace danger. Instead, there's a muted fellowship as you enter, grasping your chipped mug like it's constructed of gold. The only illumination comes from a flickering oil lamp and the radiance of the range. Everything seems suspended, as if the residence itself is suspending its breath, anticipating the onslaught of instructions, reprimands, and impossible chores. The tea is potent, dark, and if the washing maid is feeling charitable, prepared with more than just the third rinsing of previous day's leaves, the ranking reveals itself here too. The cook's mug is the most substantial and is perpetually filled initially. The butler, if he condescends to participate, drinks from bone china. Everyone else has whatever is remaining chipped or discoloured, or if you're unfortunate, still subtly scented of onions from last evening's broth. Sugar is scarce, protected like treasure. And woe to the maid who takes more than her allocation. There's perpetually one she's been documented, her transgression quietly recorded for future retaliation. In this fragile tranquillity, you have an instant to just exist. You encircle your palms around your mug, permitting the warmth to penetrate into your bones. For a fleeting instant, You are not a uniform, a mobile silhouette, or the subject of somebody's grievance. You are simply exhausted and alive and thankful for the pause. Somebody tears off a portion of crust from previous day's loaf, submerging it in tea to soften it into something almost consumable. The cook grumbles about the condition of the pantry. The footman, yawning, attempts not to scorch his tongue. And you catch the kitchen maid eyeing the preserve jar, calculating whether she can sneak an additional spoonful without being caught. This is where partnerships are formed, complaints whispered, and the day's secret tactics are charted out. Who's on the negative side of the head housekeeper this week? Who's in jeopardy of being caught with pilfered biscuits? Which visitor has brought a canine that bites? You exchange expressions, silent messages more eloquent than speech. Watch out for the lady today. The gentleman's in a temperament. The youngsters are scheming. The canine has located the butter. There is perpetually something to concern about, but at least for now, you concern together. The kettle whistles, somebody curses softly, and a second round is distributed, weaker but still welcome. Outside, the sky is commencing to lighten. In a few instants, the residents will convulse awake. Bells will clang, footwear will thud, instructions will descend like precipitation. But here, in this secret morning ritual, you are secure for just a heartbeat extended. Somebody shares a joke, quietly, carefully, about the butler's hairpiece, and for an instant, everyone grins, accomplice. The laughter is soft, but it seems like defiance, like proof that you are more than your obligations. You examine the clock, nearly time. The cups are emptied, crumbs swept away, faces prepared for combat. With a final swallow, you position your mug aside, smoothing your apron and collecting yourself. The tranquility is concluded. The day is arriving, loud and demanding, but you step out of the kitchen a little warmer, strengthened by the solidarity of the secret society, prepared to confront whatever fresh chaos awaits in a realm of infinite regulations. It's these small instants that keep you human, the uniform a symbol of respectability, discipline, and the Victorian residence's insatiable appetite for structure. From the instant you entered domestic service, you exchanged your identity for a title maid, and your individuality for a uniform as rigid and unforgiving as the head housekeeper's stare. Each morning you slip into layers of tradition and discomfort, fastening yourself into a costume constructed not for ease or personal expression, but for the silent performance of obedience. Black, starched, and on a favourable day, almost coordinating. Let's commence with the material. The basic dress is black wool or cotton, substantial in winter, and even more substantial in summer. The Victorians had numerous theories about health, but breathable fabrics wasn't among them. On a July afternoon, your uniform absorbs the sun and your perspiration until you're essentially steaming like a Christmas pudding abandoned on the windowsill. In the winter, the same dress is somehow thinner than rational thought, the icy atmosphere sliding between the stitching and chilling you straight to the bone. The best you can wish for is an additional petticoat, or if the laundry's current, a woolen shawl. For those brief instants you're permitted outside. Over your dress goes the apron, white, starched, until it can virtually stand on its own. The apron isn't just a layer of fabric, it's a canvas for evaluation. Spotless, you might survive the morning inspection. A smudge of ash, a splash of tea, a trace of previous day's preserve, each one a mark against your character. If you have ever experienced self-consciousness about a coffee stain on your shirt during a video meeting, imagine understanding your complete future rests on a smudge of marmalade and a head housekeeper with eagle vision. Then the collar and cuffs, starched, scratchy and cut so precisely tight you question if they were constructed to restrict airflow as a means of enforcing humility. The act of fastening your collar is a daily meditation on the limits of human patience. You fasten each fastener, positioning your chin, vision watering from the effort and the not-so-subtle smell of starch. The cuffs, meanwhile, are so constricting you briefly consider what existence would be like as a wristless individual. Of course, the authentic villain of the uniform is the petticoat. Supposed to create a modest, flowing silhouette, it is in reality a relentless tangle of fabric that encircles around your knees, trips you up on staircases and attempts to escape every time you flex over. By midday, you have become a master at the awkward crouch, an essential for lifting fallen utensils, managing escaped kittens, or simply retrieving your dignity from under the sideboard. No detail is too small to escape the head housekeeper's observation. Hosiery must be black and pulled high. Footwear must be buffed to a somewhat ridiculous shine, even though the only thing that observes them is the kitchen feline. Hair must be pulled back in a bun so tight it's a minor miracle you can still blink. Heaven assist you if a single strand escapes and lands in the gentleman's broth. There's a weekly ritual of laundry, starching and pressing so intense that modern dry cleaners would weep on laundry day. You risk your fingertips to boiling water and clouds of steam, all for the privilege of wearing the globe's least comfortable armour. Uniforms serve another purpose, erasing individuality. The superior you blend in with the wallpaper, the more you're praised. Smartly turned out signifies you've made yourself invisible, a mobile fixture, an extra in the grand production that is upper-class Victorian existence. There are no bold colours, no fancy pins, no jewellery, unless you desire to be accused of pretensions and affectations. If you catch yourself admiring a patterned ribbon or a bright fastener, recall, joy is for Sundays and the wealthy. By the conclusion of the day, your uniform bears witness to your labour. Creases, stains, the subtle scent of polish and potatoes. You peel it off with relief, folding it carefully, understanding tomorrow you'll don it again. Starched black and never quite comfortable, but proof that you belong, even if only as a spirit, in the corridors of somebody else's residence. There's an instant, just after sunrise, when the Victorian estate appears almost pristine, beams of golden illumination slanting through stained glass openings, glinting off buffed timber and catching the gentle swirl of particles you just devoted the last hour attempting to eliminate. Welcome to the never-ending conflict. You versus the grime, particles and enigmatic filth that materialize overnight as if summoned by some malicious resident's spirit. In this residence, cleanliness isn't just next to godliness, it's next to impossible. Your initial opponent, particles. It collects on every flat surface, adheres to railings and lurks behind vases that weigh as much as a toddler. You start in the drawing room, where the household's heirlooms are exhibited with pride and absolutely zero consideration. For ease of cleaning, there's the clock with the impossible to arrive at crevices, the perpetually present china figurines and, naturally, the crystal decanter assortment. Each one a fragile trap anticipating for a clumsy palm. You handle your feather duster with the precision of a surgeon and the resignation of somebody who understands she'll be back tomorrow. You labour quietly, methodically, perpetually dusting top to bottom. That's regulation 1. Otherwise, gravity becomes your adversary, undoing your labour with every careless swipe. There's a technique to it, a rhythm. Dust, tap, shake, exhale. The duster is your wand. But unlike in fairy tales, nothing stays enchanted for extended. Somewhere, perpetually, a layer of particles escapes you, especially on the elevated shelves, which only the head housekeeper inspects, and only when she's feeling particularly critical. After dusting comes buffing, and here the amusement really commences. Brass candle holders, copper pans, silver service, each one demanding its own special paste, cloth and ritual. You acquire the alchemy of household maintenance, beeswax for timber, vinegar for glass, elbow grease for everything else. Sometimes you question your existence choices as you buff a doorknob for the 3rd time this week, squinting to observe your own increasingly exhausted reflection. If you can observe your face in it, you're nearly completed, the butler states. If you can observe your soul, you've been buffing too extended, The smell of beeswax and polish lingers on your palms, extended after the labour is completed, a scent you'll forever associate with fatigue and subtle pride. You proceed from chamber to chamber, wiping away fingerprints and marks, perpetually watching for the telltale mark of a muddy paw or a sticky youngster. The residence is full of adversaries. The household spaniel, whose tail is a particles mop of catastrophe, and the youngest youngster who observes your gleaming sideboard as the perfect canvas for her sticky preserve digits. Sometimes it's not just particles or smudges, but complete filth. There are enigmatic stains on the stair covering, origin debated, solution unclear. You attempt to erase them with soap, water and desperate optimism. Occasionally, the stain triumphs. The head housekeeper makes a notation in her ledger, and you make a mental notation to attempt again tomorrow, perhaps with stronger soap or a quiet prayer to the patron saint of upholstery. Let's not forget the final combat. The flooring. Every inch of tile, timber and carpet must gleam, or at least not make sounds. You sweep, mop, and sometimes crawl on your palms and knees, hunting crumbs with the dedication of a bloodhound. Every once in a while you locate a coin, a fastener, or a lost earring. Little treasures in the trenches. By the time the household descends, the residence sparkles, at least on the surface. The conflict is never truly won, only fought anew. Each day you take an instant surveying your handiwork before the next wave of particles settles in and you exhale, duster in palm, prepared to start all over again. The combat never concludes, but at least you're winning small victories, one buffed candle holder at a time. Breakfast in a Victorian estate is less a meal and more an exercise in choreography, a ritual of clinking porcelain, murmured greetings and suppressed catastrophe. For you, it commences extended before anyone else stirs. While the household dreams of scones and soft-boiled eggs, you're already below. Hair neat, apron immaculate, clutching a service like a gladiator prepared for combat. The kitchen is the conflict room. The cook presides at the stove with a wooden spoon, sceptre ruling over bubbling vessels, sizzling bacon, and the perpetually present possibility of scorching the porridge. Every morning the selection is the same. Eggs, bread, bacon, tea, quite possibly a kipper if the household is feeling continental. Simple in principle, but the reality is disorder disguised as routine. The washing maid releases a plate. The footman blames the new individual for the missing cutlery. You realise somebody forgot to order milk again. The only thing standing between this and complete mutiny is a steaming kettle and everyone's collective anxiety of the head housekeeper. You assemble the household services with trembling precision. Each cup, saucer and spoon must be in precisely the correct position. 1 centimetre off and you'll never hear the conclusion of it. The sugar container goes left, the butter dish right, the toast stacked in a little pyramid like a carbohydrate monument. You examine and re-examine everything, haunted by the memory of the orange marmalade incident, when you positioned the preserves on the incorrect service and nearly sparked a diplomatic crisis between the gentleman and his brother-in-law. Once the services are prepared, it's time for the silent procession up the main stairway, through the corridor to the breakfast chamber. You proceed quietly, attempting not to jostle the contents, desperately wishing you don't sneeze. The entrances must be opened with just the correct amount of ceremony. Too loud, and you'll wake the canine. Too soft, and you'll be accused of slipping about. You enter, head bowed, vision lowered, aiming for invisibility. Breakfast service is all about calculation. The gentleman likes his tea, distributed precisely 3 minutes after sitting. The lady prefers her toast crisp, but not browned. The youngsters, when present, require elaborate negotiations. Milk warm, but not hot. Preserve spread thin as atmosphere. Crusts banished to the far corners of the table. You are anticipated to anticipate requirements before they are voiced. To refill, replace and clear with a sixth perception honed by anxiety and repetition. In these early hours dialogue is minimal. The household reads the newspaper in quiet, making only the sporadic remark about the climate or the condition of the morning mail. Your task is to stand at attention by the sideboard, motionless, except for the discreet refill of teacups or the retrieval of a fallen utensil. You become an expert at listening without appearing to listen, catching hints of scandal, gossip or the day's plans, knowledge that you will never, under any circumstances, repeat. Sometimes things go incorrect. A sneeze escapes, a spoon clatters to the flooring. Once you serve the incorrect preserve and the gentleman's eyebrow arches just sufficiently to curdle your blood. In these instants, time appears to freeze. The butler's lips twitch in disapproval. The head housekeeper makes a mental notation. You apologise, correct your error, and attempt not to burst into flames from the embarrassment. When the meal is concluded, the household rises and glides out, leaving half-consumed eggs and crumbs as proof of their passing. You swoop in, clearing plates with practised competency, stacking everything just so for the journey back to the kitchen. The dining chamber, once tense and formal, now seems oddly empty. A stage after the performance, the performer's gone, breakfast is concluded. The calm before the day's authentic disorder, errands, bells, and impossible inventories descends. For one brief shining instant, you survived the gauntlet of eggs and etiquette. Tomorrow it all commences again, and you'll be prepared, service in palm, bracing for whatever storms await. Quiet is golden in the Victorian estate, but sometimes it's also an iron regulation, enforced with a stare from the head housekeeper or a lifted eyebrow from the butler. For a maid, speech is rationed even more strictly than sugar. In the presence of the household, your voice is meant to be used as sparingly as the favourable napkins reserved for absolute emergencies or polite monosyllabic responses. The solution? You become a master of non-verbal communication, skilled in a complete language constructed out of stares, acknowledgements, and above all, the eyebrow lift. The preparation is unspoken and relentless. The initial time you blurt out, "Excuse me, ma'am," you receive the expression a blend of astonishment and horror, as if you'd announced the residence was on fire because somebody abandoned a teapot slightly ajar. The next time, you're silent as the grave. But now the challenge is making your point understood. Enter the eyebrow, your new best companion. Within a week, you acquire to signal everything with a flick, arch, or subtle twitch. A single lifted brow signifies, "Did you observe that?" 2 signifies danger. Head housekeeper approaching a quick stare with a tiny lift signals, "Yes, I detected the bell, and no, I'm not going to be the initial to respond to it." Your face becomes a finely tuned instrument, capable of conveying sarcasm, caution, support, and the subtlest hint of not it. In the perpetual competition of avoiding the trickiest chores, it's a silent fellowship, a secret dialogue running beneath the surface of daily existence. When the household is at table and the youngest spills his tea for the 3rd time, you and the kitchen maid share a micro-expression that communicates, "Here we go again." If the gentleman asks for his usual, and nobody is certain what that signifies today, a stare is exchanged, eyebrows up, vision wide, an unspoken "any ideas?" It's the Victorian equivalent of a group chat, but with more starch and less typing. This talent isn't just limited to the servants' corridor. Even in the grandest chambers, the butler orchestrates the staff with a mere lift of his formidable brow. Now is the instant for refills. Now is the time to clear. Now you must absolutely pretend you didn't just trip over the corner of the carpet. You become an expert at reading faces as well as presenting your own. When the head housekeeper's eyebrow twitches, you understand it's time to appear busy, even if you have to invent a reason to be furiously dusting the same vase for the 5th time that morning. Sometimes the non-verbal messages become almost a competition. There's the challenge of making the washing maid laugh during a dreary stretch of silver buffing achieved with just the correct roll of your vision and an exaggerated quirk of your brow. The footman, for his portion, communicates disdain for particularly substantial luggage with a series of increasingly melodramatic dimension and eyebrow acrobatics. If the household only understood how much was being communicated in their presence, they might reconsider the regulations of quiet or, more likely, double down. Of course, there's danger in misinterpretation. A misplaced smirk can be read as insolence, a frown as evaluation, a twitch at the incorrect instant as outright rebellion. There's perpetually the risk that the lady will catch a stray expression and assign you to buff the silverware cupboard, alone in quiet for the next 3 hours. So you acquire subtlety, perfecting the skill of keeping a straight face even as disorder erupts around you. By evening, when the household retires and the staff finally has an instant to breathe, there's a brief, blessed return to speech. Over a shared mug of diluted tea, you recount the day's conflicts. Your stories punctuated by exaggerated brows and knowing expressions. It's then you realize, in a realm where quiet is demanded, you've developed a voice all your own. One eyebrow lift at a time. If the estate above the servants' quarters is a realm of buffed silver, perfect manners, and whispered private matters, then below the servants' quarters is a completely different universe, one with its own regulations, customs, and legends. The servants' corridor is the bustling heart of this concealed realm. A space both fiercely hierarchical and strangely democratic, where partnerships are formed, complaints aired, and gossip spreads more rapidly than spilled tea across a starched apron. The descent from the grand stairway to the servants' territory is a passage between realities. The flooring loses its gleam, the wallpaper gives way to scrubbed plaster, and the illumination is a little dimmer, flickering from oil lamps and the radiance of the kitchen range. Down here, the atmosphere is saturated with the scent of baking bread, roasting meats, boiling laundry, and sometimes, on a terrible day, a hint of blocked drain. If the drawing chamber is the brain of the residence, the realm below the servants' quarters is its grumbling, churning stomach. At the centre of this universe is the servants' corridor, a lengthy table flanked by battered chairs, each one fiercely defended by its rightful owner. This is where the daily meals are shared rapidly. Disputes are settled, sometimes loudly, and the complicated pecking sequence is enforced with the competency of a Victorian tax collector. At the head of the table sits the butler, ruler of the underworld, resplendent in waistcoat and a perpetual atmosphere of silent evaluation. Next to him, the head housekeeper, keeper of regulations, inventories, and everyone's final nerve. The remainder of the staff arrange themselves according to status and experience. The cook sits as near to the range as possible, claiming her right to warmth and initial dibs on whatever's baking. The senior housemaids cluster together, forming an impenetrable partition of starch and shared experience, while new maids and kitchen individuals hover at the fringes, wishing to avoid observation until they've proven themselves worthy or at least capable of brewing a decent cup of tea. Dialogue below the servants' quarters is rapid and lively, a swirling blend of gossip, guidance, grievances, and occasionally genuine news from the outside realm. Everyone understands who's in the residence, who's departing, who shattered the azure vase, and which visiting relative snores so loudly you can detect it through 3 floors and a brick partition. Information is currency, and stories are traded with the talent of professional diplomats, though perpetually with an observation on the entrance in case the butler appears prepared to restore structure with a cough or a stare. Discipline is rigid, but fellowship runs deep. Rivalries simmer, kitchen versus housemaids, footman versus hall individual. But when an outside possibility appears, a surprise inspection, a sickly visitor, or, heaven forbid, a new head housekeeper with fresh concepts, everyone closes ranks with a loyalty as fierce as any regiment. There are inside jokes, whispered partnerships, and the sporadic clandestine romance concealed in broom closets or under the stairs. Private matters are kept mostly. Betrayals are recalled perpetually. Down here, the regulations are both simpler and more complicated. Hard labour is anticipated. tardiness is punished, and stealing is a cardinal transgression unless it's the final scone, and then it's just tradition. Everyone dreams of a superior posting, kinder employers, or just maybe a promotion to head housemaid or cook. For now, survival depends on wit, stamina, and understanding when to keep your head down. When the day is completed and the household above retires to their plush beds, the realm below the servants' quarters exhales. There's laughter, whispered dreams, and, if the cook is feeling charitable, a treat snuck from the pantry. It isn't a world defined by luxury, but it is its own entire domain, a cryptic, frenetic, fiercely loyal workforce that maintains the vast household's function. And though your name may never be engraved on silver downstairs, you are firmly rooted here. If the floors above represent a realm of shining silverware, perfect etiquette, and hushed confessions, then the space below is a completely distinct sphere, one with its own distinct laws, conventions, and histories. The servants' gathering place is the energetic core of this secret empire, a setting both rigidly structured and surprisingly egalitarian, where partnerships are forged, complaints are voiced, and gossip circulates quicker than warm liquid spilled over a clean apron. The drop from the main flight of stairs to the staff's quarters is a transition between two different planes. The floors lose their sheen, fancy paper gives way to simple scrubbed walls, and the light is noticeably softer, faintly glowing from basic oil lamps and the constant fire of the cooking range. Down here, the air is dense with the smells of fresh bread, cooking fowl, bubbling washing, and occasionally, on a difficult day, the slight tang of a clogged drain. If the reception room is considered the house's intelligence, the downstairs operation is its perpetually churning, noisy digestive system. At the midpoint of this universe is the hall where the servants meet, marked by a long table lined with well-worn chairs, each fiercely guarded by the person who claims it. This is where the hurried daily meals are consumed, disagreements are resolved, sometimes loudly, and the intricate system of hierarchy is enforced with the efficiency of a seasoned tax collector. At the head sites the chief butler, the undisputed master of this lower world, impeccably dressed in his vest and possessing a continuous look of quiet assessment. Beside him is the head housekeeper, the diligent custodian of rules, schedules, and everyone's fraying temper. The rest of the help position themselves according to their rank and tenure. The head cook sits as close to the heat as possible, asserting her right to warmth and first preference on any baked goods. The experienced maids gather together, creating a solid barrier of stiff fabric and shared pasts, while the newest maids and kitchen assistants hover near the edges, hoping to remain unnoticed until they have demonstrated competence, or at least the ability to properly brew a cup of tea. Conversation among the staff is quick and animated, a surging mix of secrets, advice, complaints, and sometimes even genuine news from the outside. Everyone is aware of who is staying, who is departing, who accidentally broke the blue vase, and which visiting family member snores loudly enough to be heard through 3 stories and a thick wall. Information is their valuable asset, and stories are exchanged with the finesse of seasoned negotiators, though always with a quick eye on the entrance in case the chief butler appears, ready to enforce silence with a slight throat clearing or a pointed gaze. While discipline is strict, mutual support runs deep. Conflicts subtly exist between the cooks and the maids, the footmen and the errand boys. But the moment an external threat arises, a sudden audit, a sickly visitor, or heaven forbid a new housekeeper with innovative methods, everyone unites with a shared loyalty as intense as any military group. There are shared jokes, covert agreements, and the rare hidden romantic encounter tucked away in utility closets or beneath the stairs. Secrets are mostly protected, acts of disloyalty are never forgotten. The regulations here are simultaneously simpler and more complex. Dedicated effort is mandatory, tardiness is penalised, and taking things is the most severe offence, unless it's the final sweet roll, in which case it's simply a long-standing custom. Everyone harbours dreams of a superior placement, kinder employers, or perhaps a promotion to head maid or head cook. For the present, survival relies on quick wit, resilience, and knowing when to keep your attention on your work. When the day concludes and the upstairs family retreats to their soft beds, the downstairs world finally relaxes. There is laughter, whispered ambitions, and if the cook is feeling generous, a forbidden treat sneaked out from the supply room. It is not a realm of extravagance, but it is its own world. A cryptic, frenetic, fiercely loyal workforce that maintains the vast household's function. And though your name may never be engraved on silver downstairs, you are firmly rooted here. Bathing night. The very mention of the phrase stirs both anticipation and apprehension in the heart of every domestic worker in the era. Occurring once a week, whether you feel the need for it or not, and you likely do, the household mandates a ritual cleaning that is part sanitation, part shared experience, and part overwhelming logistical challenge. If you are inclined to romanticize the notion of a peaceful soak in a period tub by candlelight, prepare to be disillusioned. In reality, it is less of a pampering day and more of an exhibition of sheer technical skill, bargaining, and, at times, public viewing. It all starts with the massive effort of getting the hot water. There is no convenient tap for heat, just large pails, stovetop kettles, and the muscle strength you never realized you possessed. You and the other maids form a moving line, passing buckets from the kitchen to the upstairs bathroom, or, for those truly unlucky, to a basic tub set up in the washroom. The trip is fraught with peril. Each step requires perfect balance. The floors are cold and slick, and the possibility of spilling is significant. The penalty for dropping a container at minimum is a harsh reprimand from the head housekeeper. At its worst, you are sent to fetch another load. In the cold dimness, the water is heated on the cooking range, carefully scooped into the tub and tested with a careful finger. If it's too hot, you will hear about it. If it's too cool, well, you will hear about that too. The first person to bathe is typically the head of the house, whose bath is sparkling clean, exactly the right warmth, and sometimes scented with costly oils. The rest of the family follows sequentially, with gradually diminishing levels of warmth and freshness. By the time the staff gets a chance, assuming there's any water remaining, you are less washing and more slowly soaking in the combined residues and hair of everyone who bathed before you. Privacy is a luxury rarely afforded. Doors that fail to close completely, drapes that billow in the cool air, and a constant stream of individuals needing towels, simple soap, or merely asking how much longer you will be. There is ongoing negotiation. Who secures the second place, the sought-after still warm, not yet cloudy position? Who ends up last, the undesirable vegetable soup-like spot? And who is responsible for cleaning the tub thoroughly when the process is complete? Scandal constantly threatens. There is always a cautionary tale about a maid who stayed in too long or dared to sing a melody while bathing, earning a week's worth of disapproving glances from the head cook. The actual washing ritual is both rushed and dutiful. You take off your clothing, trying not to notice the cold drafts, imagined figures, or the portrait of the ancestor that appears to be scrutinizing you from the wall. The cleaning soap is harsh and purely functional. None of that expensive floral scent here, leaving your skin as scratchy as the tub itself. A swift rinsing, a quick scrubbing, and then you are out again, chilled and drying yourself with a towel that is more worn than plush. There is a practical reason for this hardship. Health experts of the period claimed that bathing helped ward off everything from gum disease to low spirits. Of course, some still believed too much washing was detrimental, so you are careful not to appear too eager. The cook reminds everyone of the old lady who caught a severe cold after her third bath that year and was never quite the same afterward. But you understand deep down that a thorough cleaning is worth the risk. After the baths comes the clean-up, a task only marginally less demanding than the initial water hauling. You discard the cloudy water, scrub the tub's surface, twist the excess water from the towels, and wipe the stone floor, all while the housekeeper observes for any stray hairs or traces of suds left behind. The final proof of the indignity is your hands, wrinkled and raw, the undeniable evidence of a bath night spent working. Still, when everything is done, there is a feeling of accomplishment, a quick moment when you are cleaner than you have been all week. You collapse onto your small bed, hair damp, muscles throbbing, but your spirit's just a bit uplifted. Bathing night may be a chaotic struggle, but it also demonstrates that sometimes survival depends on finding small comforts and the simple hope of being slightly less dirty than you were yesterday. If a level of punishment in the afterlife is reserved for souls who failed to finish their meal, it must be located somewhere in the washroom, a damp, disordered area where uncleaned dishes multiply and self-respect goes to air dry on a rack. This is where plates go after the grand meal, and where you, the washroom attendant, fight a daily war against towering piles of oil-covered dishes, broken cups and silverware that seems to appear overnight. Forget the elegance of the main dining space. This is the true engine room of the household, operating to the constant clatter of metal pots and mumbled frustrations. The washroom is situated immediately adjacent to the main cooking area, always damp, poorly lit, and constantly somewhat slick. The atmosphere is heavy with the scent of wet soil, wood smoke, and the faint memory of past dinners. Shelves sag under the mass of cooking vessels and dessert containers, and the only evidence of high living is the sporadic gleam of a silver utensil someone mistakenly dropped in with the bowls. A permanent cloud of condensation blurs the window, turning every rising sun into a hazy painting that only the most optimistic attendant pretends is scenic. Your work begins the moment the first dirty cup arrives, typically the cook's, always with an odd ring mark near the base. Soon the breakfast dishes pour in, porridge bowls coated with oats, tea mugs with residual liquid still swishing, and toast racks carrying the phantom presence of bread. You push up your sleeves and plunge your hands into water so hot it could easily be used as a liquid meal. The initial shock of the heat is the worst. After that, your hands become pleasantly numb, and you can almost imagine you are wearing protective coverings. Washing dishes is both a technical skill and a demanding craft. Lather the strong soap, scrub forcefully with a stiff brush, and hope that whatever has hardened onto the serving dish releases before you lose all motivation. The soap of the era, it must be noted, is not gentle. It is a solid block of harsh necessity designed to strip away grease, colour, and occasionally a layer of skin. There is a rigid procedure: glassware first, then mugs, then main plates, and only when all hope is lost, the pots whose baked-on insides tell the story of last week's savoury dishes and at least one attempt at a dessert gone wrong. Next is the rinsing, a lengthy operation that requires juggling extremely hot water, a metal scoop, and the constant danger of splashing your uniform, your shoes, or your already cleaned hands. The rinsed items are placed on the drying structure, a wobbly, overloaded device that protests loudly if you simply breathe too heavily near it. Once you stacked the dishes too quickly and watched with dread as half the columns slid like dominoes onto the hard floor. The cook refused to speak to you for 3 entire days. Now you stack with the careful attention of a diamond cutter and the fear of someone treading on thin ice. There is a steady rhythm to washroom work, a relentless, repeating cycle, broken only by the occasional emergency, broken crockery, an unexpected visit from the chief butler, or the sudden alarming sound of a small creature behind the coal storage area. Sometimes, if you are fortunate, another maid will stop by for a quick whispered conversation, and you exchange updates, mutual frustrations, and dark, humorous speculations about what exactly is at the bottom of the stew pot. These brief moments of shared hardship help keep you sane. Once the dish mountain is finally cleared, you scrub the sink basin, sweep the stone floor, and empty the waste buckets. The lingering smell of cooked vegetables remains, but there is a definite sense of accomplishment in a washroom return to order. You look over your domain, arms tired, fingernails rough, and realise you have survived another round in the endless dishwashing competition. Of course, the quiet peace is temporary. The next meal looms, and with it another wave of plates, pots, and pans. But for now, you steal a moment to loosen your fingers and perhaps, if you are fast, grab a leftover crust from the breakfast tray. The washroom may be where dishes meet their end, but it is also where maids discover their true fortitude, a mix of sheer endurance, simple humour, and stubborn determination fueled by soap. It is a generally accepted fact, at least among those who serve, that an employee with an empty, rumbling stomach is undoubtedly in desperate need of a small meal. Unfortunately, in a grand household, food is both perpetually present and frustratingly unavailable. The cooking area is full of roasting meats and fresh-baked bread, but the best you can usually manage is a fragment snatched in the small gaps between one task and the next. Welcome to the riskiest pastime in domestic service, quickly eating something without being discovered. The rules are unspoken but perfectly understood. The cook controls the food supplies, the housekeeper controls your employment. And you possess absolutely nothing except perhaps a finely tuned internal clock. The penalties for unauthorized eating range from a look of complete scorn to immediate dismissal, depending on the current mood in the kitchen and the seriousness of your transgression. Was it merely a particle of sweet bread, or did you dare to pocket a whole slice of preserved meat? It is a careful calculation, balancing risk against reward, hunger against the hope of keeping your job. The cook guards her food store like an angry beast protecting its treasure. Every can is checked, every dessert is counted, every leftover is covered and clearly marked. You have heard the warnings. A maid caught with sweet jam on her uniform. A footman sent away for taking a piece of cheese. You learn to blend into the background, to look busy and completely uninterested in the decorated cake cooling nearby. Your ability to notice things from the side improves dramatically. You can sense the approach of a superior without ever needing to move your head. You perfect the technique of the accidental sampling, wiping a finger through spilled cooking juices, popping a tiny piece off the edge of the cutting board, or catching a runaway vegetable before it hits the floor. Timing is the essential factor. The brief moment for illicit eating appears and disappears in seconds. Perhaps the cook has stepped away to argue with the butler about the drink list. Maybe the housekeeper is upstairs lecturing someone for dust found on the railing. In these rare, perfect moments, you move quickly, a swift, small bite, nothing large, a shaving of firm cheese, a crust of bread, or, on the most fortunate occasions, the last bit of preserved meat still stuck to the pan. The flavour is always enhanced by being forbidden, though it is usually gone so rapidly you barely register it before your heart returns to its normal beat. Of course, the dangers are plentiful. There is the risk of being caught with food on your hands, literally. If jam is involved, there is the risk of taking a bite of something intended for the dog, who, incidentally, eats better cuts of meat than most of the staff. Once, in a moment of extreme hunger, you mistook a decorative item for a real fruit, only to almost break a tooth on what turned out to be a cleverly painted wooden apple. You learn to sniff cautiously, chew silently, and always keep one ear open for the sound of footsteps on the stone floor. The sense of shared connection among the staff is partially built on these small shared acts of defiance. The kitchen helper slips you a piece of crust while passing. You, in return, alert her when the housekeeper is making her rounds. Sometimes a particularly thoughtful footman conveniently forgets a heel of bread on the main table. These tiny acts of mutual support mean more than any grand meal, connecting the staff through the unspoken understanding that everyone is, at their core, just slightly hungry. The immediate explanations for being caught are legendary. Just organising, ma'am? Testing for harmful substances, sir? saving it from the small rodent. Some are believed, most are not. The housekeeper's eyes supposedly see everything, or so she insists. You live in constant, low-level fear of her appearing in the doorway at precisely the wrong moment, a slice of pie suspended in mid-air between your hand and your mouth. But even with the serious risks, you continue. Hunger is patient, and so are you. Each secretly consumed fragment is a small personal win, proof that you are not entirely defeated by the household's strictures. High risk, minimal reward. But for a brief second, as the flavour remains, you remember what it feels like to claim something for yourself. And in the environment of domestic service, that is almost as satisfying as a full feast. Washing day in a grand household is not merely a task, it is a tremendous undertaking. A weekly symphony scored with tired exhales, a composition written in condensation, and solos performed by strained muscles and irritated hands. The family above may walk around in clean fabrics and pure white table coverings, but the reality for the staff is measured in pails, strong cleaning agent, and the slow, inevitable damage to your skin. If you have ever complained about a tough spot or a malfunctioning machine, rest assured that the maid's washing day of the past is the subject of historical scrubbing stories. The morning begins not with natural sounds, but with the housekeeper's voice echoing through the lower corridors. You and your colleagues descend upon the linen storage, dragging large containers overflowing with bedding, towels, sleeping clothes, and the occasional unknown piece of clothing that somehow escaped the previous week's clean. Every item must be carefully counted, noted, and inspected for markings, a polite way of referring to the kind of stains that make you wonder if the master has been fighting large birds, or if the youngest child has begun experimenting with spilled food art. The washing process itself is a complex routine involving huge pots of bubbling water, cold rinsing tubs, and enormous blocks of abrasive cleaning soap. The kitchen cooking surface is fully occupied for the entire day. Heating water in vast quantities, you roll up your sleeves, brace yourself, and plunge your hands into a basin that swings between scalding and icy, depending on how quickly you move. First, the white items, bedding and shirts scrubbed against ribbed wooden surfaces until your knuckles turn red like raw meat. There is a precise tempo to the work. Soak, rub, squeeze, sigh, repeat, and repeat again until you can recite your daily worries to the beat. The abrasive soap is the true force in this operation, a yellowish block of harsh strength that effectively removes grease, self-respect, and occasionally the outer layer of skin. The suds get everywhere, under your nails, in your eyes, sometimes accidentally in your mouth. If you are unlucky or prone to quiet singing while working, you become intimately familiar with every kind of stain, grass, wine, ink, and those peculiar blemishes that defy all scientific explanation. Every successful scrubbing is a small personal win. Every failure is blamed on substandard materials, or if you dare, the laundry worker's lack of sufficient effort. Rinsing is the next stage, an endless pouring of water in large metal tubs swirling with soap residue and the remnants of 1,000 dirty items. You wring out each piece with aching wrists, arms shaking, knowing that the housekeeper will check the results with the scrutiny of a border guard looking for illegal goods. Then comes the brightening agent, blue powder added to make the whites appear impossibly bright, though half the time it simply dyes your hands a permanent shade of blue. Finally, the drying. If the weather is agreeable, you carry heavy baskets outside to the lines in the enclosed yard, securing each item with cold fingers and hoping the local birds do not claim the best napkins. If it is raining, which it almost always is, the drying racks are pulled close to the cooking range, filling the air with the smell of wet fabric and sheer desperation. Irons, those heavy metal objects, are heated on the stovetop and used like heavy tools, smoothing out wrinkles and occasionally accidentally burning a lace edge until it is brittle. By the afternoon you are half soaked, half overheated, and completely drained. The washing area is a humid sauna of vapour, loose threads, and whispered news. You share anecdotes, laugh at the day's setbacks, and compare blisters like medals of courage. When all is finished, each item is neatly folded, counted once more, and returned to its designated location, spotless until the next round of unavoidable mess. As you collapse onto your mattress, you realize that washing day is its own unique test of endurance, one that leaves you completely wrung out, thoroughly scrubbed, and quietly victorious. After all, in the constant battle against dirt, you have survived to rinse another week. If a level of difficulty exists for souls who left their meal unfinished, it is located somewhere within the washroom, a damp, disordered area where uncleaned dishes multiply and self-respect goes to air dry on a rack. This is where plates go after the grand meal, and where you, the washroom attendant, fight a daily war against towering piles of oil-covered dishes, broken cups, and silverware that seems to appear overnight. Forget the elegance of the main dining space. This is the true engine room of the household, operating to the constant clatter of metal pots and mumbled frustrations. The washroom is situated immediately adjacent to the main cooking area, always damp, poorly lit, and constantly somewhat slick. The atmosphere is heavy, with the scent of wet soil, wood smoke, and the faint memory of past dinners. Shelves sag under the mass of cooking vessels and dessert containers, and the only evidence of high living is the sporadic gleam of a silver utensil someone mistakenly dropped in with the bowls. A permanent cloud of condensation blurs the window, turning every rising sun into a hazy painting that only the most optimistic attendant pretends is scenic. Your work begins the moment the first dirty cup arrives, typically the cook's, always with an odd ring mark near the base. Soon the breakfast dishes pour in, porridge bowls coated with oats, tea mugs with residual liquid still swishing, and toast racks carrying the phantom presence of bread. You push up your sleeves and plunge your hands into water so hot it could easily be used as a liquid meal. The initial shock of the heat is the worst. After that, your hands become pleasantly numb, and you can almost imagine you are wearing protective coverings. Washing dishes is both a technical skill and a demanding craft. Lather the strong soap, scrub forcefully with a stiff brush, and hope that whatever has hardened onto the serving dish releases before you lose all motivation. The soap of the era, it must be noted, is not gentle. It is a solid block of harsh necessity designed to strip away grease, colour, and occasionally a layer of skin. There is a rigid procedure: glassware first, then mugs, then main plates, then only when all hope is lost, the pots whose baked-on insides tell the story of last week's savoury dishes, and at least one attempt at a dessert gone wrong. Next is the rinsing, a lengthy operation that requires juggling extremely hot water, a metal scoop, and the constant danger of splashing your uniform, your shoes, or your already cleaned hands. The rinsed items are placed on the drying structure, a wobbly, overloaded device that protests loudly if you simply breathe too heavily near it. Once, you stacked the dishes too quickly and watched with dread as half the columns slid, like dominoes, onto the hard floor. The cook refused to speak to you for 3 entire days. You now stack with the careful attention of a diamond cutter and the fear of someone treading on thin ice. There is a steady rhythm to washroom work, a relentless, repeating cycle broken only by the occasional emergency. Broken crockery, an unexpected visit from the chief butler, or the sudden alarming sound of a small creature behind the coal storage area. Sometimes, if you are fortunate, another maid will stop by for a quick whispered conversation, and you exchange updates, mutual frustrations, and dark, humorous speculations about what exactly is at the bottom of the stew pot. These brief moments of shared hardship help keep you sane. Once the dish mountain is finally cleared, you scrub the sink basin, sweep the stone floor, and empty the waste buckets. The lingering smell of cooked vegetables remains, but there is a definite sense of accomplishment in a washroom returned to order. You look over your domain, arms tired, fingernails rough, and realise you have survived another round in the endless dishwashing competition. Of course, the quiet peace is temporary. The next meal looms, and with it, another wave of plates, pots, and pans. But for now, you steal a moment to loosen your fingers and perhaps, if you are fast, grab a leftover crust from the breakfast tray. The washroom may be where dishes meet their end, but it is also where maids discover their true fortitude. A mix of sheer endurance, simple humour, and stubborn determination fueled by soap. If a grand household is seen as a kingdom, then its internal staircases are the risky mountain paths, the sole means to travel from the busy world of the staff to the polished, treacherous realm of the family above. Forget modern exercise equipment and gym subscriptions. If you are a domestic worker, your regular physical activity consists of countless climbs and descents, each staircase a fresh trial of balance, speed, and sheer tenacity. Welcome to the original physical training plan, proudly brought to you by the House of Creaks, sudden slips, and unexpected obstructions. Stairs are everywhere. Grand, sweeping main stairways for the family, steep, tight-back staircases for the staff, and hidden employee passages that seem to lead nowhere but always have the faint odour of cooked vegetables and coal. The minute you begin your shift, you are constantly moving, up with hot water, down with containers of coal, up with serving trays, down with dirty plates, up to clean the portraits, down to retrieve the washing. You could easily track your day by the number of vertical steps taken, if only you ever had a moment to pause and count them. The main stairway is a true masterpiece, wide, carpeted, and lined with family paintings, all appearing to judge your speed and posture. These are the show staircases. You ascend slowly, balancing trays with the control of an acrobat, praying not to stumble and scatter food items right in front of the lady of the house. The handrail shines with polish and potential danger. You never fully rely on it, remembering the time it gave way under the previous maid, sending her tumbling in a shower of linen and shocked gasps. The constant instruction is, walk, do not run, and never, under any circumstances, let the housekeeper find a scuff mark on the carpet. But the true challenge is the backstairs, steep, tight, and winding, seemingly built with the intention of reducing the staff population through gradual exhaustion. Carrying a heavy pail or a stack of sheets, you press yourself against the wall to let the cook pass, each of you holding your heavy loads and offering silent pleas to the spirit of unbroken joints. There is a loose piece of flooring halfway up, a dip in the wood that groans a warning, and one specific step that wobbles just enough to make you reconsider your life choices. Your shoes, practical as they are, offer about as much grip as oiled fish. Every trip is a test of memory. Who requested coal for the nursery fire? Did you already deliver the hot water to the blue room? Or was that yesterday's task? You create a mental map, tracking requests and routes, all while navigating unforeseen hazards, a loose animal, a misplaced footman, or, worst of all, the master's hat left in your path like a trap. Staircases are not just dangerous, they are relentless. They wait for you at every turn, demanding payment in the form of sore calf muscles and constantly aching knees. By midday, your legs burn with a fiery sensation usually reserved for metal workers or condemned prisoners. By the time night falls, you have climbed the equivalent of a small mountain and descended with the grace, or lack thereof, of a bag of grain. Yet, there is a hidden source of pride here. Other maids may boast about their cooking skills or neat folding ability, but you know you are built of stronger material, literally. Your legs are like steel, your balance unwavering, your ability to sprint up 3 floors without spilling anything is nearly Olympic level. You measure your days not in hours but in vertical flights conquered. Of course, the real trick is surviving the inevitable falls. Everyone slips eventually. The question is not if, but when and which suffers the most damage, the tray, the tea set, or your dignity. You learn to laugh it off, share the stories with others, and keep going. After all, tomorrow brings another mountain of stairs and another opportunity to test your spirit. So you climb and climb and climb, because in a house governed by the law of gravity, only the most physically fit, or at least the most stubborn, succeed. Your lasting marks are blisters, your victories are not falling today, and your gym is a winding maze of polished wood and cold stone. Welcome to the relentless staircases of service, the ultimate test of physical endurance and a never-ending daily challenge. The clock marks 2 in the afternoon, and the grand household settles into a false quiet. The frantic rush of the morning's activities, the sound of service bells and minor mistakes, has passed, and the family, full and slightly drowsy from their midday meal, withdraws to their private spaces. The master disappears into his study for important matters which you suspect mostly involve reading the newspaper with his eyes closed, and the lady of the house reclines on the comfortable sofa in the reception area, gently fanning herself and considering her needlework with impressive levels of inactivity. You, meanwhile, are still very much awake and expected to stay that way. The afternoon quiet is a deception. It is a trap. A trial of alertness for the staff designed to eliminate the weak, the tired, and anyone tempted to lean against a railing for a moment of rest. In a world where resting is a privilege reserved for those who sign your wages, the slightest sign of sleepiness is a serious offence, punishable by extra work and the eternal disapproval of the head housekeeper. The desire to rest, however, is intensely real. You have been on your feet since before the sun rose, climbing stairs, scrubbing floors, polishing objects and dealing with waste containers. The kitchen is thick with the smell of roast meat and cooked root vegetables, and the warmth from the range wraps you in a comforting, sleep-inducing cloud. The long hallway, usually a busy route for footmen and maids, now echoes with nothing but the gentle beat of clocks and the occasional soft snore. Definitely not from you, of course, but from someone bolder or luckier who found a hidden spot. Yet there is no true escape. Every member of the staff learns to move in slow motion during the lull, drifting from one space to the next with a cloth in hand, wiping already clean surfaces. There is always a piece of seating to adjust, a decorative object to recenter, or a family painting to dust for the 3rd time that week. The housekeeper patrols like a sharp-eyed bird, watching for anyone slowing down, assigning tasks with the strange talent of someone who can detect a maid's drooping eyelids even in complete silence. You become a master of appearing busy while sneaking small moments of reprieve. Perhaps you pause near the open window under the pretense of straightening the curtains, letting the air cool your face and carry your thoughts away for a precious half a minute. Perhaps you linger in the linen storage, folding and refolding napkins, allowing the quiet, musty calmness to lull you into a brief moment of rest. Just be careful not to be caught actually sitting. To sit is to give up, to concede defeat to gravity and exhaustion, and to earn a severe lecture worthy of a play. Meanwhile, the family's afternoon schedule continues above. The children are sent out with their instructor for walks, or left to cause trouble in the nursery. The lady of the house's friends arrive, gliding in for tea and conversation, never suspecting that the tranquility they observe is maintained by an army of servants, fighting off sleep with pure determination. Every silver item you deliver is carried as if it weighed nothing. Every curtain you adjust is an act of supreme focus, even if your mind is wandering toward thoughts of your own pillow. As the afternoon progresses, you feel the shadows lengthen, and the impulse to sleep grows stronger. Some experienced maids claim to have mastered the standing rest, a semi-conscious state achieved while polishing a railing or arranging cut flowers. It is a legendary ability, spoken about with admiration in the staff hall, though few openly admit to it. Eventually, the quiet ends. The first signal for the evening meal rings, the kitchen explodes in renewed activity, and you snap back to full alertness. The lull is over. You survived. No unplanned naps, no major mistakes, just another silent victory in the long, sleepless history of domestic service. So as you shrug off that tiredness and jump back to the task, you're reminded that here a quick rest is a transgression, but pushing through without sleep is a certain type of power, one that is entirely your own. Deep inside the estate, a faint, familiar sound cuts through the silence. A bell rings, gentle, demanding, unmistakable. To anyone outside the household, it's just a quiet little sound. To a Victorian maid, it's the constant song of service, the urgent summons that ensures you never forget your entire life exists to suit someone else's schedule. There is no getting away from these bells. They are hidden in the walls, their wiring a tangle snaking behind the peeling wallpaper. Every bell on the panel in the staff's hall connects to a specific room above, each with its own simple label. It might be the drawing room, the master's study, the blue bedroom, the scullery library, or the guest suite. You truly never get used to the sound. The first time you hear one, you freeze up. Was that your bell? Is it for you this time? Does it mean something serious? Or is it just the mistress needing a second shawl because the window was cracked open for 5 seconds? Only the butler, with his almost superhuman grasp of domestic protocol, can decode the true message of every chime. A short, sharp burst signals the master is getting impatient. A soft ring means the guest is being nervous. 3 quick dings usually point to the housekeeper's particular brand of mayhem. As the new maid, you inspect the bell panel the way a scholar pores over ancient texts. You learn the distinct sound of each bell, the delicate ping of the drawing room, the jumpy jangle of the nursery, the terrifying clang from the front door signalling a visitor, perhaps a vicar, possibly an inspector, perhaps even doom. You start to even dream of the bells, their notes echoing through your sleep, blurring the line between true rest and endless servitude. Answering them is a complete skill, requiring a mix of stealth, quick movement, and the ability to look completely composed even as your heart is hammering. The second a bell rings, you fly into action with the quiet efficiency of a Victorian ninja. Your entire objective is to arrive at the room before the family member rings a second time, a sound that is a clear sign in their minds that you are already late. You run up the stairs, down the corridors, dodging stray footmen and family dogs and that one mischievous toddler. You rush, smoothing your hair, adjusting your apron, practicing your pleasant expression as you go. Naturally, not every bell is important. There are false alarms. Bells that shake when the wind blows hard or gets stuck, sending you to an empty room where no one even remembers ringing. There are trick bells, rung by bored children, testing your patience and your quickness. And then there are the terrifying simultaneous bells, when the drawing room and the library both ring right at the same time and you're forced to choose between tea for the mistress or books for the master. The butler looks at you like you should automatically know the correct answer. You don't know, you simply just run faster. Sometimes you finally reach your destination to find the room is empty, the occupant has disappeared, and the task is a complete mystery. Do you wait there? Do you quickly tidy something up just to be safe? The fear of being found standing around is always present. So you busy yourself by dusting a small table or repositioning a cushion, all while listening for the next bell to pull you away. The bells are, more than anything else, a test of your ability to be in 2 places at once. You are expected to anticipate needs, read minds, and always keep one ear open for the next sound. Some veteran maids claim they can predict which bell will ring next, feeling it deep down in their bones. Others just say the house itself follows a rhythm, and you simply have to give in to it. By evening, after countless sprints and 100 polite responses, your nerves are frayed and your shoes are worn down. The bells finally fall silent, that is, until a midnight emergency summons. You eventually collapse in the staff hall, sharing accounts of missed calls and impossible saves, united in the belief that for all your efforts, the bells will always win. And so you drift into sleep, one ear still ready, prepared to jump up at the slightest noise. In the unique world of Victorian service, you don't just answer the bells, you essentially become part of them, moving with quiet intensity, forever dependent on the next unexpected ring. There are days when the great house feels too small, too full of that clanging, and you're completely thankful to be sent outside to the gardens. This is the Victorian maid's idea of a break. At first, a garden task sounds almost lovely. Roses, fresh air, birds singing. What could be better than swapping silver polish for the sunlight? But the reality quickly appears. Victorian gardens aren't just decorative. They are muddy battlegrounds of weeds, thick earth, and elaborate horticultural ideas that have slightly failed. The moment you step into the walled garden, the entire atmosphere changes. You trade the faint smells of soap and cooking cabbage for damp soil, cut grass, and the strong whiff of fertilizer so intense you start to suspect it was deliberately placed. The head gardener, Mr. Poole, is waiting. He wears a worn hat, muddy boots, and an expression that suggests he trusts neither the weather nor the estate's fashionable new rhododendrons. He oversees the garden with a small trowel and a deep suspicion toward anyone who can't tell a daisy from a common weed. Your first assignment: deadheading the roses. It sounds easy, but you quickly realise that deadheading is merely a polite term for sacrificing your forearms to the gods of the rosebush. Every single thorn is a difficult lesson in humility. Mr. Poole grumbles from behind you, giving you advice in strange, cryptic statements. Never rely on a rosebush on a Thursday. Or be careful of the peonies. They gossip. You solemnly nod, not completely sure if you are being trained or just hazed. Weeding is the next task. There's something profoundly endless about bending over in the mud, pulling at dandelions that return with the tenacity of an unpaid bill. The older maids claim this process builds character. You think it mostly just builds blisters. Sometimes you're tasked with picking gooseberries or blackcurrants, squinting under the sun, filling your basket only to be immediately accused of eating half of the entire harvest. And yes, you probably did sneak one or two berries. Of course, the garden holds its own dangers. There is the family goose, a creature of pure meanness that protects the vegetable patch as if it contained all the crown jewels. Children sent out for fresh air quickly turn into wild yelling creatures, weaving in and out of the flower beds while you try to rake leaves and pretend not to hear their whispered plans to spray you with the garden hose. You occasionally get to plant the bulbs or scatter small seeds, always under the judgmental stare of Mr. Poole, who insists every Victorian maid should know the Latin name for nasturtiums and the exact difference between a weed and an herb. In practical terms, if the cook uses it, it's an herb. If not, it's somehow your fault for not noticing it. Regardless of the weather, you keep working, tucking in tiny seedlings, scrubbing the dirt from beneath your nails, and wondering if all this endless labour will ever be truly appreciated from the drawing room windows. But there are small, quiet comforts. The sun feels warm on your back. The air, though thick with pollen and the occasional sneeze, is free from the constant noise of the bells. Sometimes at the end of the day you discover one perfect bloom, a small secret win, proof that life can thrive in even the most managed and beaten down spots. Maybe you take a moment to savour it before you have to head back inside. Your boots are muddy, your hands are stained, your soul is just a little bit lighter. Garden duty is not glamorous, and you will likely never earn Mr. Poole's approval or truly understand his strange riddles. But for a few muddy, thorny hours, you were able to escape the mansion's thick walls, and that, as every maid knows, is a luxury worth all the blisters. If there is one chore that tests a Victorian maid's stamina, patience, and pain tolerance all at once, it is definitely ironing. The Great Ironing Marathon is not just a standard chore, it is a weekly trial by intense heat, both literally and figuratively. The family demands sheets that are crisp, collars that are immaculate, and napkins sharp enough to cut paper. Achieving this requires a fierce combination of brute strength, flawless timing, and a quiet commitment to not pass out from the intense heat. The whole grueling process begins early with the heavy irons, solid, thick slabs of cast iron that must be heated on the kitchen range until they are hot enough to sizzle an egg. And sometimes, for the careless or distracted, they do. You learn instantly to test an iron with a quick sprinkle of water. If it makes a sizzling sound, it's ready to use. If it doesn't, you're about to waste a quarter of an hour moving a cold chunk of metal across damp linen and pretending you are achieving something. Every iron has a basic wooden handle, but the heat always manages to seep right through. There are no modern oven mitts, only multiple layers of apron and a silently desperate prayer. The truly experienced veterans wrap their fingers tightly in cloth rags or quickly sneak a moment to flex and shake out the inevitable muscle cramps. There is a precise rhythm to the process. Heat the iron, press the fabric, swap it for a new hot iron. Return the cooling one to the hot stove and immediately repeat the process. If you're lucky, the rotation is seamless and fast. If not, you're left flapping a napkin in the air, wishing the iron would reheat faster. You start with the simpler items: flat sheets, basic pillowcases, plain tablecloths. The damp fabric smokes beneath your heavy hand, hissing loudly as you press down, lifting the smell of soap and a hint of scorched cotton. Next come the men's shirts, with their fiddly cuffs and collars. Each one demands total precision, the kind of focus you might expect from a watchmaker. A single wrinkle in the wrong spot could easily draw a comment from the mistress, or worse, a long lecture on household standards from the housekeeper. But the real trial is the lace. Victorian lacework is truly a thing of fragile beauty until it becomes your job to iron it. One single wrong move and it shrivels up like lettuce left out on a hot summer's day. You gently persuade it, you pat it, you whisper quiet apologies to it, all while sweating heavily and praying nobody notices your struggle until something inevitably goes wrong. The kitchen quickly fills up with steam, the air becoming thick and sticky, transforming the entire room into a kind of subtropical laundry room. The windows fog up, the floor gets slick with moisture, and every single surface radiates the kind of heat that makes you seriously question the choice of wearing starched petticoats. Conversation, if any occurs, is limited to quiet groans and tired murmurs. Be careful. That's the cook's special apron. Or is that the good napkin? Or the emergency backup? At a certain point, you completely lose all track of time. Hours pass in a continuous blur of pressing, folding, and rotating the irons. Your arms completely ache, your back is stiff, and your fingertips tingle with the memory of 100 near misses. But amidst all the steam and sweat, there is a strange sense of accomplishment in every perfectly pressed shirt, every gleaming tablecloth neatly stacked for the next unavoidable dinner. When the final iron is put away and the last napkin is perfectly folded, you pause for a brief moment, appreciating the sight of a completely neat linen cupboard. A short but satisfying victory. Of course, tomorrow someone will inevitably spill gravy or drop jam on a shirt, and the entire marathon will start all over again. But for now, you cool your burning fingers, wipe the sweat from your forehead, and limp away with the deep satisfaction of a finished race. Another day survived, another ironed mountain defeated, another unnoticed achievement. Below stairs, when the sun disappears behind the hedges and the big house becomes quiet for the evening, a powerful hush settles in. But for the maids and footmen on the night duty, the labour is far from over. The night shift in a huge Victorian mansion is a strange, shadowy world, part necessary, part haunting. As the gaslights quietly flicker and the old pipes begin to groan, you quickly realise that not all of the house's secrets are carefully locked away. The very first job is always the lamps. Shadows lengthen along the long corridors, so you move quietly from room to room with your box of matches and a well-practised hand, trimming wicks, filling up the oil, and praying you don't accidentally set the expensive drapes on fire. The night air is much colder, the floors are freezing. You hear every tiny creak, every distant footfall. The mansion now feels less like a warm home and more like a huge groaning ship in the dark. except the only thing in danger of completely sinking is your own tired eyelids. After the lamps are done, next come the fireplaces. Every single hearth must be banked carefully for the night. The embers must be arranged to last until the morning. The cook always insists on her own special method for the large kitchen range, while the master's study requires complete silence. You certainly wouldn't want to disturb his very important reading, which is absolutely not just a short nap in a comfortable armchair. Occasionally you catch a flash of the housekeeper, moving like a watchful spirit, making sure not a single candle is left burning unattended. Once the fires are completely safe, there are late-night trays that need delivering, a glass of port for the master, some warm milk for the children, or herbal tea for the mistress, who claims it helps her sleep deeply. It never does. These missions are filled with potential problems. Every floorboard threatens to give away your position. Every closed door could be hiding a wide-awake guest. The skill is in moving without a sound, with bare or stockinged feet, holding your breath, the tray perfectly steady, all while stepping over pets sleeping in awkward spots. The night brings out the mansion's other occupants as well. Cats quietly prowl, mice quickly scurry. And sometimes, just sometimes, you are certain you hear footsteps where no living person should be. Rumours spread quickly among the staff. The haunted third-floor corridor, the painting that supposedly blinks, the midnight wailing of the old pipes that may or may not be just pipes. You try not to believe any of it. But on a solo late-night round, every shadow grows longer, and every strange, unexplained noise makes your skin crawl. There are also the sudden, unexpected tasks. A crying child, a drafty window, the master's urgent demand for a specific book at midnight. Sometimes a tired guest decides they want a hot bath or, heaven forbid, a small midnight snack. There is a precise art to responding, calm, extremely apologetic, never letting on that you were actually dozing in the linen closet just 5 minutes ago. Yet, for all the strain, there is a certain quiet magic to the night shift. The house is truly yours in a way it never is during the day. The deafening noise of the bells and voices has completely stopped. You move through the total stillness, almost completely invisible, part of a secret, silent dance. Sometimes you stop by a window, watching the moonlight spill silver across the lawn, and appreciate a minute of genuine peace, broken only by the loud tick of the terrifying hall clock. Finally, as the clock slowly moves toward the dawn, your long work is almost finished. You bank the last dying fire, extinguish the last lamp, and steal a quiet moment to rest before the whole exhausting day starts all over again. The secrets of the long night shift are numerous, mostly unspoken, and all completely unforgettable. And as the huge house slowly yawns and begins to wake up, you slip back into the shadows, leaving the world above stairs to wonder how the night ever passed so quietly at all. As twilight descends and the entire family gathers, the whole house holds its breath. It's finally time for dinner, the most dramatic performance of the entire Victorian day. The kitchen instantly explodes into a chaotic but organised frenzy. Pots bubbling fiercely, saucepans clattering loudly, and the cook issuing demands with military exactness. Upstairs, the dining room is bathed in warm candlelight, gleaming polished silver, and the kind of massive floral arrangements that suggest a hidden rivalry with the royal gardens. You, as one of the junior maids, are about to enter the most stressful 60 minutes of your working week. Dinner service. It starts hours before the first course is even served. Long ago, you've been polishing forks, folding every napkin perfectly, and triple-checking that the fish knives are in their exact correct places and that absolutely no one, please, has placed a dessert spoon for the soup. The footman meticulously inspects the crystal glasses, the butler paces like a general before a major battle, and you quietly hope you can make it through the long meal without dropping anything, tripping over the heavy rug, or, the worst outcome, spilling rich gravy onto someone's expensive lap. As the guests slowly file in, you stand perfectly still by the sideboard, a mix of frayed nerves and forced composure, watching for your specific cues. The service is a precise ballet of movement and careful timing. The soup is delivered hot and to everyone at the exact same moment. Bread is refilled as soon as it disappears, and wine is poured in a slow, delicate stream that barely makes a ripple in the glass. There is no chatting allowed for you, only quiet nods, hushed whispers, and a series of deep, meaningful glances as the staff silently moves through the complex minefield of requests and potential disasters. The first course, soup. Every bowl is carried carefully on a tray, your hands steady, your steps measured. If you have ever perfectly balanced 8 steaming bowls of oxtail broth while dodging a hungry dog beneath the table and the stern gaze of the housekeeper, you understand why the soup face is a very real expression. It's focused, determined, and just slightly terrified. The guests exchange polite, murmured approvals. The footman quickly glides behind, refilling bread and giving you an encouraging, or was it a serious warning? 2 eyebrow signal. The second course, the main event. The kitchen sends up huge, steaming roasts, perfectly browned birds, and vegetables stacked in neat, symmetrical piles. Each plate must be served with an equal measure of elegance and complete invisibility. The mistress quietly signals for more peas. The master demands a sudden second helping of lamb, and a particular guest requests something that was never even on the menu. The dinner service orchestra swells. Every servant is in constant motion, the quiet clatter of silverware drowned out by polite laughter, and a steadily rising sense of dread that you are one wrong tray away from a total catastrophe. The third course, dessert, when the sugar levels are high and everyone's expectations are even higher. Delicate puddings, small tarts, and a huge towering jelly that wobbles violently with every tiny step. The butler insists on serving this one himself. But you are tasked with the aftermath, collecting the empty plates, carefully brushing away crumbs, and quietly saving a collapsed raspberry fool before anyone above stairs has a chance to notice. Throughout the entire ordeal, the skill lies in looking completely calm and unaffected, even as you are frantically trying to calculate how to get the scorched potatoes off the table and the massive wine stain out of a napkin before the next course can begin. Behind the swinging door, you share quick, breathless updates with the other staff. A dropped fork, a close call with a sauce boat, a heroic rescue by the young kitchen mate. Finally, as coffee is served and the weary guests slowly move toward the drawing room, you finally exhale. Your feet ache, your nerves are completely shot, and you are already mentally dreading the looming avalanche of dirty dishes waiting for you below stairs. But for a brief moment, you can stand tall, knowing you have successfully survived another dinner service. It was an orchestration of careful grace and total chaos, completely unseen but absolutely vital. It is the quiet, beating heart of the Victorian evening. There is a specific kind of coldness that moves through the mansion when the news finally arrives. The relatives are on their way. No matter how large the house is or how short the guest list, one simple truth remains. Visiting family completely overturns every single routine, multiplies every chore, and brings a new, fresh wave of pure chaos. The staff nervously exchange glances in the hall, silently preparing for the approaching storm. The butler polishes his best shoes twice, the housekeeper dusts with a new, fierce vengeance, and you, the maid, start secretly hoping for a miracle to completely intervene. The first real sign of the coming disaster is the huge laundry pile, which swells overnight to the size of a small mountain. Suddenly, every single sheet, towel, and napkin must be cleaned, perfectly ironed, and folded with surgical precision. Spare bedrooms are stripped bare, beds are remade, and strange, mysterious stains, some of them as old as the Crimean War, are discovered on the very best coverlets. If even one pillowcase is slightly out of place, rest assured it will be instantly noticed by Aunt Eugenia, who considers herself the ultimate authority on running a household despite not having lifted a single finger since 1842. As the heavy carriages begin to roll in, the real drama starts. Relatives arrive in a sudden rush, each one bringing a trunk, a nervous dog, and very specific dietary needs. The children, strange, completely unsupervised creatures, scatter through the house like loose marbles, knocking over vases, leaving trails of sticky jam, and somehow managing to lock themselves inside the pantry at least twice a day. At least once every few hours you find yourself summoned to locate lost hats, lost gloves, and occasionally lost relatives. Meals rapidly become full theatrical productions. The kitchen staff groans under the weight of extra courses and a few simple preferences. Uncle Percy absolutely won't eat onions, Cousin Mildred demands her eggs be perfectly coddled, and nobody under any circumstances is allowed to be served rabbit, not since the major incident of '67. The dining room must expand to squeeze in extra chairs, each one requiring careful polishing, repositioning, and a quiet prayer that no one will notice the slight wobble in the third seat from the left. The bells start to ring much more often, and with new, completely impossible to decipher codes. One new guest requests hot water 3 times every hour, another sends back their simple tea, because it supposedly tastes of Wednesday. The mistress glides through it all with the fixed smile of a practiced general, smoothly dispatching orders and gracious apologies while you dash from floor to floor, your to-do list growing exponentially with every passing minute. Downstairs, the servants' hall quickly becomes the unofficial war room. There is non-stop gossip. Who's flirting with whom? Who is most likely to start a family argument before dessert? And which relative will fake an illness to avoid the dreaded croquet match? Temporary truces are quickly forged over cups of incredibly strong tea and the shared misery of Aunt Eugenia's long monologues. The cook, who is usually completely unflappable, is found muttering about suddenly resigning to join a monastery at least twice a day. Bedtime is a total joke. Sheets must be carefully turned down, hot water bottles delivered, and every single guest tucked in as if they were royalty. Inevitably, someone requests 2 extra pillows or suddenly remembers a favourite book left in the library just after you have finally sat down. Lights are extinguished only for the bells to immediately ring out again, summoning you to yet another emergency, which usually involves a missing favourite shawl or a sudden draught from the east window. By the time the final carriage pulls away, the staff are walking around like ghosts, held together by strong tea, shared companionship, and the sweet relief of impending quiet. You survey the complete wreckage, crumbs, smudges, faint echoes of past arguments, and realise you have successfully survived another round. When the relatives arrive, it means double the amount of work, triple the amount of drama, and the kind of adventure that immediately reminds you that quiet days are life's greatest, most undervalued luxury. There is a peculiar, subtle excitement in the air on payday, though it's not exactly the kind of feeling you might hope for. Once a month, the entire household enters a strange state of intense anticipation. The footman polishes his shoes with slightly more enthusiasm than usual. The kitchen maids start whispering excitedly about sausage rolls, and you, even though you truly know better by now, can't help but feel a tiny flutter of hope in your rigidly starched chest. The day begins exactly as every other. Bells, chores, and a master's list that only seems to grow longer the closer it gets to pay time. You go about your duties with a new, subtle energy, calculating what this month's meagre wages might finally buy. A fresh pair of stockings, a new comb to replace the old one with only 3 teeth, a warm pie from the market, still hot if you run fast enough to get it. Of course, this is mostly just fantasy. You know the exact number by heart, and it is a very modest sum. Generous, they often say, for someone who is already given room and board. Never mind that the board is mostly stale leftover bread crusts, and the room is a small, slanted attic, barely large enough for your simple dreams. At some point, after a quick lunch, the housekeeper calls you into her office, a forbidding lair with neat, precise ledgers, a constantly ticking clock, and the overpowering smell of lavender water. You stand with your back straight, your hands carefully folded as she reads your name in a tone that suggests she has just found you hiding beneath a small teacup. She counts out the small coins into your hand, always counting them twice. Trust, but verify, and then slides them across the desk with the barest hint of a smile. You thank her, curtsy, and quickly back away, holding your modest riches tightly like a dragon guarding a small hoard. For a brief, fleeting moment, you feel rich with cash, relatively speaking. Down in the servants' hall, a small buzz of genuine excitement takes hold. Everyone's pocket jingles softly, and the conversation turns to future plans. The boot boy dreams of a half day at the local cricket pitch. The scullery maid eyes a pretty length of ribbon she spotted in town, and the cook, feeling flush from some extra overtime, actually contemplates buying real beef for Sunday's stew. Someone excitedly suggests a trip to the music hall, and for a few shining minutes the future seems to glimmer with real possibility. But the harsh reality quickly sets in. Wages are stretched extremely thin, first for basic essentials, then for family money sent home, and always with a small amount set aside for unexpected emergencies. Boots have holes, petticoats wear out easily, and the doctor must be paid should illness ever strike. The small luxuries, a single orange, a scrap of lace, a second-hand novel, are considered, weighed, and more often than not carefully put back on the shelf. Money vanishes as quickly as it appears. In its place, something else lives. Some weeks, the staff joke that their true experience is the real treasure. How many napkins you have perfectly folded, floors you have diligently scrubbed, and fires you have successfully stoked. How quickly you can set a table or skillfully dodge the housekeeper's wrath. You become rich in a unique set of skills that no one above stairs will ever truly notice. The silent art of smoothing linens, the incredible speed of a well-executed hallway sprint, the zen-like patience of surviving chamber pot duty. You are paid most of all in pure endurance. At the very end of the day, you tuck your hard-earned wages deep into your pocket or in the tea tin beneath your small cot, listening to the quiet, muted clink of coins earned with simple, hard work and humble pride. You close your eyes, already meticulously planning how to stretch every single penny until next month's payday. You are rich in experience, yet poor in almost everything else. But for tonight, the comforting dream of new stockings and a warm slice of pie is completely yours. And that, for a Victorian maid, is almost as sweet as a genuine raise. Almost. Once the final bell has completely faded and the mansion's daily chaos gives way to the late-night quiet, there is a rare, cherished hour for yourself, just enough time to put a small pen to paper. In the small world of the Victorian maid, letters sent home are literal lifelines, threads woven from deep loyalty, strong longing, and the quiet hope that your family still clearly remembers your face. Of course, every letter is as much a carefully crafted performance as a true confession written in a subtle, careful code that tells the necessary truth while never, ever letting on how truly difficult things actually are. You begin by describing the huge house, very grand, with luxurious carpets and a lovely garden, you write, carefully omitting that you only ever walk the carpets in sensible shoes, and the garden is mostly experienced while crouching low, frantically yanking stubborn weeds. The family is kind, you continue, which is code for the mistress hasn't actually shouted at me this week, and no one has accused me of stealing the plum cake. You comment that the children are lively, which in reality means they have the relentless energy of caffeinated ferrets. and are constantly sticky and enjoy hiding inside the laundry baskets. Writing home is a difficult exercise in complete restraint. You want so badly to explain how incredibly tired you are, how your entire back aches, how you desperately dream of one whole night's uninterrupted sleep without a bell violently clanging in your ear, but you don't. Instead, you mention the work keeps me very busy, which might easily translate to a 16-hour day of sprinting upstairs and negotiating with heavy chamber pots. You compliment the cook's stews, edible if you manage to drown them in enough bread. You mention the cat, aloof, and always politely ask about your siblings. Is Elsie still seeing the boy from the grocer's? You ask this, fully aware your mother will take it to mean, well, I miss you and I haven't quite given up. These letters follow a certain etiquette. Never give away desperation, never admit to an error unless you can make it sound funny. When it's funny, it becomes a lesson, and you must, absolutely must, include a little success. I shined the silver and was told it gleamed. Or, the headmaid praised my new apron. Even if the compliment was a backhanded one, a kind word wrapped in a warning, you turn it into something special for the folks at home. The real skill is the subtle complaint, a tricky balance of truth and hope. The weather has been wet and the clothes are taking forever to dry, you write. Instead of I've been wrestling with 3 miles of bed sheets and I've caught a bad chill. The children keep me fully occupied. Never. I am one loud scream away from running off to America. A letter sent home in the Victorian age is a textbook in playing things down, like smiling even as your boots fill with rain. You remember to include a question about your mother's painful joints, your father's vegetable patch, or how the old clock on the mantelpiece is running. You hope that every response brings a little piece of home back to you, a recipe, a bit of village news, or a report that someone is having twins again. You carefully fold the paper, seal the envelope, and sometimes put in a shilling if your monthly earnings permit. It is both a comfort and a duty, proof that you haven't forgotten where you started, even while scrubbing the steps of someone else's house. The letters you send are your invisible safety line, stretching over miles and social classes, keeping you connected to a place where you are known by your given name, not just as girl. As you put out the lamp, you hope your message brings joy, even laughter, and that the affection woven into every sentence is enough to support you and your family through another lonely month. Respectful, cheerful, and quietly honest, your letter is a small private victory, and sometimes the only true freedom you possess. When the lights are turned off and the great house sinks into its deepest quiet, there is a short, precious moment in the day of a Victorian maid that is truly hers alone, the time between her tasks and her rest. Your day has been ruled by a chorus of ringing bells and orders, but finally you are by yourself in your attic bed, covered by blankets that never quite reach the bottom of the bed. The darkness is complete, broken only by the light of the moon, or more often by the anxious scratching of the rats in the walls. Sleep is not a given. Sometimes it arrives with welcome speed, your tired body giving into exhaustion before your head fully settles on the pillow. More often, your thoughts race, going over missteps, replaying close calls, the tea that spilled, the bell you missed, the dining napkin folded wrong, and worrying if anyone will notice tomorrow's little shortcut when you dust. Then the dreaming begins. Sometimes you dream of your old home. Busy kitchens, laughter near the fireplace, the scent of fresh bread or soap hanging outside to dry. You dream of your family, of your brothers and sisters who remember your face, of a mother who never needs a second letter to know you care. On rare lucky evenings, you dream of the impossible. A space to yourself, a soft feather quilt, a whole week with no demands but rest. There are dreams of better jobs, a household where the workload is lighter, the employers are kinder, and the uniform actually fits. In these dreams, the mansion is always warm, the bells ring less often, and the housekeeper greets you with a sincere smile. You hold on to these dreams, letting them carry you away from the endless routine. But sleep brings bad dreams too. the sound of footsteps echoing down empty halls, the sharp voice of the lady of the house summoning you late at night for a chore you cannot complete, the crushing fear of losing your place because of a cracked cup or one tiny smear on the silver. Sometimes you wake up sweating, convinced you have overslept or missed the first bell. You stay still, your heart pounding, staring at the dark shapes, reminding yourself that there is still time before morning, still a little moment that is yours. It is during these wakeful hours that you assess your life, your goals, and your fears. Every maid knows someone who went on to a better situation. A home in the country with fewer flights of stairs, a city place with time off in the afternoon, a thoughtful mistress who actually sends a birthday card. Their stories circulate in the servants' hall like whispered myths, passed between bunks, fueling the constant hope that your chance will come soon. Sometimes you even dare to imagine something entirely outside of service. A shop you own, a small house with a yard, or the most incredible thought, a family you raise on your own terms. But hope is a dangerous thing, especially for people who live at the mercy of someone else's mood and clock. You put your ambitions away, secure in the knowledge that dreams, both when you are awake and asleep, are free. They cost nothing. They don't take up space in the trunk under your bed, and they are not subject to the housekeeper's inspection. As you finally drift off, you find a strange peace in the familiar sounds of your surroundings. The sound of the roof beams creaking, the promise of a new dawn. The labour will always, always be difficult. The money will never be enough. But as long as you can hold on to your dreams, you can keep going. Tomorrow brings another day of work, another sequence of bells and aching hands. But tonight, at least tonight, you feel rich in potential. In the daily life of the Victorian maid, it is hope that keeps the clocks moving, the lights burning, and the heart quietly, stubbornly beating. Every magnificent Victorian house holds many secrets, but in the servants' quarters there is an even deeper understanding, the unwritten rule of silence. You may spend your days close to all the drama, but your speech must be as carefully controlled as your uniform. The skill of holding your tongue is the first rule of loyalty in your job. Break it, and you are likely to find your recommendations disappear as fast as the leftovers from last Sunday's dessert. Gossip, naturally, is the lifeblood of the staff area. It floats through the air along with the steam from the washroom, shared in quick whispers and knowing looks while shining silver or waiting for the cook's approval of a baked dish. The cook pretends she doesn't notice, but somehow she knows who is courting whom, who is due for a raise, and who almost set the storage room on fire. Again, you quickly master the skill of speaking indirectly, hiding exciting information in harmless stories and clever jokes. If a maid is late returning from the village or a footman is seen with a new tie, the news travels faster than a winter sickness. Yet despite all the chatter, there is one strict rule. The family's secrets stay inside the family. You witness more in 1 week than most outsiders see in a lifetime. Late-night shouting behind closed doors, guests who seem suspiciously tearful, the master sneaking out after the sun sets. Every servant could write a best-selling book, but instead you write nothing. Not a word, not a sound, not even in your letters home. If you must mention a family crisis, you use a special code. The mistress is feeling unwell this week. The master has retired to his library and you leave the rest unsaid. Sometimes the rules are unclear. There are staff dramas too. Crushes that fail, stolen cookies. The famous story of the drunk footman that no one mentions during the day. These stories are shared in the safe darkness of the attic after all the lights are out, when the day's stress gives way to laughter and mock serious vows. You make promises of loyalty, pinky swears and cross-your-heart oaths, all sealed with a shared biscuit, and the silent agreement that what happens among the staff stays among the staff. The hardest test of this silence comes with the unexpected, the moment when someone from the family asks a direct question. Perhaps a visitor asks why the lady of the house looks so pale, or a relative inquires about the master's financial troubles. You answer with polite evasion, "I am afraid I would not know, sir." and you pray your expression gives nothing away. The ability to look unfazed is necessary. The ability to change the subject is a true art form. Practice makes perfect. And after enough close calls, your emotionless face could win prizes. Even among your close friends, there are boundaries. Some pieces of information are simply too risky to share. The housekeeper might tell you a personal worry, or the butler might let slip a family secret after one too many drinks. But you keep these hidden safely away. In a world where your employment depends on discretion, a talkative mouth is a luxury no one can afford. Recommendations are everything, and one mistake can see you dismissed. Your future plans shattered by one moment of carelessness. At the end of the day, you learn to value the quiet unity that the code of silence creates. It is a strange comfort, this silent bond formed through shared struggles and the certainty that everyone is protecting someone else's secret as carefully as they protect their own. In the grand Victorian house, the real value is not just in the gossip, but in the trust. And you quickly learn that sometimes keeping quiet is the only thing that stands between you and the street. And so you keep your mouth shut, laugh very softly, and carry the house's secrets like hidden treasures. It is not always easy, but it is what keeps the entire complex household running, one carefully guarded secret at a time. The first sign is the noisy wheels of a carriage on the loose stones, followed by the clear sound of formal voices in the main hall. A message quickly travels down below. The pastor is here. The mood changes instantly. Every servant knows what they must do when the man of God arrives. Back straight, eyes down, hands clasped, and an air of deep faith so convincing you could be declared a saint immediately. In Victorian England, the pastor's visit is more than just a religious event. It is a detailed inspection, a moral review, and sometimes a test of how well you can act. The housekeeper suddenly becomes extremely devout. The cook wipes flour from her hands and talks quietly about God's will. And you, the maid, find yourself tidying hymn books and wondering if your shoes are tidy enough to earn you salvation. There is always a desperate rush to find the special teapot and the best set of china, the ones that are not chipped, not stained, and certainly not the ones recently used for the lady's medicinal brandy. Once the pastor is seated comfortably in the formal sitting room, a deep quiet descends on the house. The mistress guides him to the best seat by the warm fireplace, pouring his tea with an extra measure of respect. You are asked to bring in biscuits, preferably freshly baked, although in a crisis, anything round and generally edible will do. Your job is to appear useful, silent, and just pious enough to be respectable, but not so holy that it seems suspicious. There is a routine to these calls. The pastor makes small talk, asking softly about the moral condition of the house. Has everyone been attending services? Are the children reading their Bible lessons? Is the cook still preferring a Sunday roast to going to the pub? You stand by, quietly hoping that the children haven't been heard plotting rebellion in the children's room, or that no one brings up the problem with the Christmas cake and the liquor. When it is time for prayers, you fold your hands and bow your head. If hymns are sung, you join in, silently mouthing the words and hoping the pastor doesn't realise you are half a verse behind. There is always one staff member with a singing voice like a broken gate. Today it is the footman, bravely attempting the hymn in a musical pitch no one has heard before. You try not to smile, biting your lip and concentrating on looking suitably moved. The pastor, meanwhile, offers advice and gentle criticism. Kindness begins at home, he says, looking pointedly at the mistress, who replies with a strained smile and a promise to remind the children to donate their old toys. He blesses the food, asks about any illnesses, and drops hints about the upcoming church fair where staff attendance is mandatory but excitement is entirely optional. Sometimes, if the pastor is in a mood to preach, you are given a short lecture on the dangers of laziness or the importance of modesty. You nod when expected, practicing your most innocent look. It is a strange kind of performance, one where everyone knows their role, even if they occasionally miss their entrance. Once the visit is over and the pastor's carriage drives away, there is a shared breath of relief. The house returns to its normal pace, the good china is put away, the biscuits are eaten, and the cook grumbles about religious figures. In the end, you unpin your stiff collar and thank God that you survived another church inspection with your reputation mostly safe, for a Victorian maid. When the pastor visits, the real achievement is remembering all the words to the hymn, pouring the tea without shaking, and looking devout without actually falling asleep. Just another day of managing the moral demands of your job. For the Victorian maid, the change of seasons is less a beautiful natural cycle and more a progression of serious domestic emergencies. Spring is not simply flowers and birdsong. Christmas is not just festive decorations and carols. Each season brings a different difficulty, turning the house into an obstacle course of new tasks, major cleaning projects, and the kind of yearly horrors that could make anyone hate calendars forever. Spring naturally means the great spring cleaning, a phrase that sends a deep chill through every servant. It is the major cleansing, a time when the housekeeper pulls out lists longer than any government document. Nothing is left untouched. Rugs are hit, curtains are removed and washed, and windows are cleaned until you can spot a smudge from 3 rooms away. Beds are taken outside and beaten as if to drive out the ghosts of winter. You climb tall ladders to wipe down the light fixtures. Your reward? A face covered in dust and spider webs. The entire house becomes a difficult path of wet laundry, misplaced furniture, and buckets that always spill right where you step. Asking for fresh air is less about good health and more about airing out your own complaints. Just as you start to recover, summer arrives with its own set of trials. The family decides to host outdoor parties, which means endless rounds of washing tea sets, polishing lawn chairs, and running back and forth with trays of iced drinks and baked goods. Someone always gets too much sun, the dog always runs off, and a bee always lands in the dessert. Next up is the yearly picnic, which sounds pleasant until you consider the chore of hauling half the pantry's dishes out to a muddy field, just so the household can perch on rough blankets and gripe about the insects. Fall arrives, the time for canning and preservation. The kitchen transforms into a bubbling laboratory of relishes, preserves, and pickles. Apples must be gutted, pears stripped of their skins, and plums depitted until your hands throb. The head cook becomes a dictator, timing every cooking session with military rigour and threatening banishment to the washroom if even one jar slips. If you are not processing fruit, you are clearing leaves in the yard or scrubbing grime from boots caked in October dirt. Then Christmas arrives, wonderful in theory, an immense trial in reality. The preparations start weeks ahead. Fruit mixture is blended, sweet puddings are steamed, and the estate is draped in greenery until it resembles less a home and more a jungle. Every flat surface bristles with holly and ivy. Every chamber resonates with holiday songs and complaints. The family hosts gatherings, each one grander than the last, and you find yourself reciting the 12 days of Christmas between polishing the silver and steering the dog clear of the holiday fowl. On Christmas morning, you are up before sunrise peeling potatoes in the chilly kitchen and are fortunate to smell the turkey by the time the family sits for their feast. But the greatest ordeal of all may be the 12th night, when every decoration, branch and taper must be packed away and the house restored to its original, impossibly tidy condition. You spend days sucking up pine needles, organising damaged ornaments, and trying to recall where everything was stored initially. Through it all, you keep going, discovering small pleasures, a quick bite of a hidden mince pie, a joke shared with a helper, a crisp winter morning as you drag decorations back upstairs. Because if there is one lesson seasonal suffering imparts, it is that nothing is permanent, not even spring cleaning. And when the ordeal finally passes, you commend yourself. Another cycle completed. Another round of yearly terrors survived just in time for the next one. It is a reality rarely acknowledged in history books. But downstairs, the true heart of a Victorian manor is not merely the laundry wringer or the huge stove. It is the social life of the staff. Between lugging coal containers and evading the mistress, there exists a clandestine realm of infatuations, romance, and a kind of flirting that can make even a starched apron ripple. It begins, as such things usually do, with an observation. Perhaps it is the new delivery boy, tall and elegant, balancing a tray with enviable balance, or the cook's helper, face flushed from the stove's heat, who makes even a bag of potatoes seem charming. Eyes meet across the bustling kitchen. Looks are exchanged, and soon the courtship starts. Every meeting holds significance. An extra bit of sugar for your tea, a freshly laundered napkin deliberately placed in your way, or a mysterious note tucked behind the spice containers. But love below stairs is far from simple. Strict guidelines control staff behaviour. The housekeeper's stare is sharper than a butcher's knife, and the butler can detect unapproved laughter from 3 rooms away. All staff members are expected to maintain formal conduct at all times, a rule that is both unachievable and tempting to ignore. A quiet talk on the service stairs or a shared smile near the oven might escape official notice, but everyone else below stairs observes everything. Naturally, there are dangers. A poorly timed wink can earn you a week of the most unpleasant chores. Being discovered holding hands by the wrong person can get you moved to another estate, or, if you are especially unlucky, entirely out of a job. Rumours spread faster than spilled coffee, and every secret meeting is shadowed by the chance that someone, usually the youngest kitchen boy, will talk for the price of a penny. Secret affection thrives in concealed spaces, the freezing washroom, the grounds after dark, the maze of passages leading to the attic bedrooms, a quick kiss in the linen closet, a note slipped in the servants' hall, a shy compliment. Wearing your best clothes on Sunday, you become skilled at inventing reasons for tasks, fetching coal, folding cloths, polishing candle holders just to be nearby for a moment. Sometimes, when the day is done and the house is quiet, laughter fills the servants' attic. Stories are swapped, and if you are lucky, hands are held in the flickering candlelight. But love, when it happens, is both a blessing and a difficulty. There are temporary alliances made for ballroom dances, hearts broken over competing footmen, and times when the risk feels worthwhile, when the smile across the dinner table is the highlight of your day. Weddings do happen, though seldom with full approval. Every marriage means 2 fewer people to shine the cutlery. And so the mistress views every developing romance with deep, grave suspicion. Sometimes misfortune occurs. The wrong correspondence found, a floral gift delivered to the wrong maid, or an innocent jest overheard and greatly misunderstood. Tears are quietly shed in the linen cupboard. Hearts heal and routine continues. Ultimately, the staff's love lives are experienced in the margins, brief, optimistic, and just a touch reckless. Yet even in the turmoil, these moments of connection are the essential rhythm of life below stairs. For every rule broken, every risk taken, there is the satisfaction of knowing that even in the most tightly controlled home, the heart will always find a way to be a little bit foolish. And in the world of Victorian employment, sometimes foolishness is the most courageous act of all. There is no job security quite as fragile as that of a Victorian maid. At any time, the danger of being unemployed, what the staff below stairs call the phantom, can creep into your path. No matter how thoroughly you scrub, how quietly you operate, or how invisible you make yourself, you live with a constant underlying fear. One mistake might mean you are let go. Sometimes it is sudden, as jarring as a kettle dropped on stone. Perhaps the family's finances have changed, the master's investments failed, or a new mistress brings her own devoted helpers. The staff gather in the servants' hall, murmuring over weak tea, exchanging whispers about job cuts and reorganisations. There are no promises. You can be dismissed for nearly anything: a cracked teacup, a poorly timed sigh, or simply for being on the receiving end of someone's bad temper. Other times, it is less about a disaster and more about the slow build-up of unsuitability. The mistress's notebook is a silent horror, each negative mark, late with the morning tray, a uniform not perfectly clean, a heavy weight. A neglected bell call matters more than all your unseen successes. The regulations are detailed and many, and one violation, even if accidental, is enough to move you closer to the exit. The dismissals themselves are dramatic. There is the formal summons to the mistress's office, the hushed discussion, the verdict delivered with professional regret. Your services will no longer be necessary. Sometimes there is a reference, but often it is just a handshake and a stern warning about future conduct. Your few possessions are packed quickly, perhaps a fresh outfit, a letter home, a ribbon tucked at the bottom of the trunk, and you are escorted out through the delivery entrance, dignity clutched tightly against the cold. The prospect of unemployment is not only personal, it hangs over the entire staff like a wet cloak. Every departure is felt by everyone. A friend gone, a space suddenly quieter, an extra shift to cover, more labour for fewer people. The uncertainty creates a unique mix of nervousness and toughness. You learn to interpret moods, avoid confrontation, and perfect the skill of becoming necessary but never indispensable. To be noticed is risky, to be forgotten, deadly. Of course, there is a world beyond the main door. If you are fired, you join the quiet line at the employment office, standing with other hopefuls, references in hand, rehearsing your best manners and your tale of unfortunate circumstances. The registry official examines you like goods at a market, teeth, posture, etiquette, before declaring you fit for some new household. Sometimes you are fortunate and secure a better position, a kinder mistress, a reduced workload, perhaps even a chance for advancement. Sometimes it is worse: stricter rules, less generous wages, or a house haunted by the memory of the maid you have replaced. Yet despite the fear, there is a strange optimism to it all. Each fresh start is an opportunity to begin again, to make new acquaintances, and just maybe to find a place that feels right. Stories circulate among the staff of those who left service for retail, for their own families, or who saved enough money to sail to distant countries where no one cares if your apron is starched. In the end, the phantom of unemployment is both a threat and a promise. A reminder that nothing lasts forever and that every close opens the door to a new story. For a Victorian maid, the future is always uncertain. But survival means learning to accept change, and sometimes to embrace it with welcoming, if slightly shaky, hands. And so, as the gaslights fade and the endless staircases grow quiet, you, our time-travelling listener, have completed a full day as a service worker in a Victorian manor. You have emptied waste pots at daybreak, escaped disaster at dinner, and lived through more drama than the storyline of a lengthy novel. You have mastered the ancient skills of silent communication, clever snacking, and the heroic struggle against dust that refuses to disappear no matter how many hours you fight with a feather duster and a tin of furniture polish. It was not all sophistication and tea trays. You have endured restrictive uniforms, unpredictable relatives, and employers who mistake respect for not making direct eye contact with them. You coped with countless rules, freezing floors, and the ever-present anxiety of being jobless, all while knowing that one error could send you back to the employment office, explaining to strangers why you are currently without a situation. Your social life was subtle looks in the washroom, your comfort was a chipped mug of weak tea, and your greatest luxury was imagining a calmer home, or at least one with fewer flights of stairs. But through it all, you persevered, because the true centre of the Victorian household was not the silver or the pressed linens, but the women and a few brave men who kept it running, one clattering of pans and one whispered secret at a time. The young maids of history were survivors. Comedians, quiet tacticians, and unwilling acrobats holding families and homes together while never truly receiving the recognition they deserved. So tonight, as you sink into your own soft, cosy bed, with no bells to answer, no corridor ghosts to evade, perhaps spare a moment of thought for those whose labour kept the grandest houses functioning, often with aching bodies and hopeful hearts. History is filled with their stories, not always grand but always human, determined and quietly strong. And as you close your eyes, thankful for indoor plumbing and the blessed lack of waste pots, remember, life may be chaotic and a little bit absurd, but it is also proof that people, even in the most structured situations, find a way to laugh, to withstand, and to dream of something just a little bit better. Sleep well,